Welcome back to Retro Lucha TV. This is your host with the most, El Ojo, and today we kick off the Las Luchadoras Film Series. This movie was released in 1963 and actually has several titles, the most famous being Las Luchadoras contra el Médico Asesino. It also goes by the names The Wrestling Women versus the Killer Doctor, Doctor Doom, no, not that one, leave me alone Disney, and lastly, Rock and Wrestling Women versus the Aztec Ape. Just a side note, there are no great apes in the Americas, unless, of course, you count Sasquatch. Directed by one of the greats of Lucha Libre films, Rene Cardona, and starring Lorena Velázquez as Gloria Venus and Elizabeth Campbell as Golden Ruby. As mentioned in our previous video, Lucha Libre Band, go check that out if you haven't already. Both women were not trained wrestlers. In fact, Elizabeth Campbell was an American-born actress who starred in 18 films, including Operación 67, Las Lobas del Ring, and Las Mujeres Panteras. Meanwhile, Lorena Velázquez transcended the genre and starred in over 130 projects. Some of her most noteworthy lucha films include Las Momias de San Ángel, Santo contra los Zombies, and La Hacha Diabólica. Without further ado, let's start the show. Intro. Newspaper headline. Explains that crimes of El Médico Asesino continue. Not to be confused with the wrestler, técnico, and protagonist of our previous review, El Enmascarado de Plata, this is a different Médico. Cut to a woman in a fancy coat walking down an alley. Two men begin to follow her. Suddenly, a hairy man creeps from the shadows and chokes her. Meanwhile, at the arena, we get our first match of the film. There is a women's tag match. Lorena Velázquez stands on the apron. The crowd from an obviously different arena cheers. The match is nothing to write home about. Gloria Venus comes in for the hot tag and is a hawk on fire. After the match, she goes to the dressing room with her sister, Alicia. Suddenly, we are transported to the villain's lair. The woman who was abducted earlier is on an operating table. It looks like two doctors are prepping her for brain surgery, and they keep showing electrical currents during the surgery. When suddenly, the tall Médico says, "It failed again." The short-masked man says, "Why don't we get someone younger, more athletic?" Pause. These doctors are looking for younger, athletic women for scientific research. I really hope so. The tall Médico says, "I was thinking that too." Kind of feels like the tall Médico is lying. He also says they will try again until they defeat death, whatever that means. There is a growl heard, and they go check on Gomar. Who is Gomar, you ask? After walking down to the basement with a meat hanging from hooks, Gomar, the half-man, half-beast, is revealed. See, El Médico Asesino put a gorilla's brain in a human's body. Why not a human brain in a gorilla's body? So that the beast could have the strength of a gorilla and the intelligence of a man? But what do I know? I'm not a doctor. He has then fed one of the ribs from the ceiling. El Médico Asesino is surprised he's not intelligent and says he is slowly turning more primitive. Also, in this scene, it is hard to tell who is talking since there is one rib in the middle of the shot. El Médico Asesino goes into the cage, and Gomar, like most human brain men, doesn't want to share his food. Apparently, El Médico Asesino somehow has Gomar hypnotized. It is never explained how, but once he transforms into a full gorilla, El Médico Asesino will not be able to control him. I am pretty sure that is not how brain surgery works. Then El Médico Asesino expresses his evil plan. He wants to put human brains in human bodies, but the human body is fragile. Not sure how that's more complicated than transferring brains between two different species, but as mentioned earlier, I'm not a medical expert. You know, the more this movie goes on, the less I think El Médico is an actual medical professional. Anywho, to circumvent this, he will use female bodies for biological reasons. On some street corner, a newsboy, no, not Freckles from the last episode, says that crimes continue. In a much cleaner lab, Professor Ruiz walks in. And you can tell he is important because he doesn't wear a lab coat and begins touching everything. I wonder if wearing all black is foreshadowing. Gloria Venus' sister, Alicia, talks about how much fun she had at the Lucha Libre arena. Sounds like me at my day job. But the professor, like many of my coworkers, doesn't like lucha. The professor tries flirting and asks Alicia what time she got home. Alicia says 2 a.m. The professor asks if her boyfriend took her, and Alicia says no. There is someone courting her, but she knows how to get home by herself. This is why you don't flirt at work. Then a nosy coworker comments on how she walks alone despite the terror of El Médico Asesino. Until the short assistant Boris says the order has arrived, so the professor hands Alicia the beaker, burnt ends first, and walks off. We get a news narration, which I think is pretty cool. The news guy says, the body of the missing woman was found, with apparent brain injury. Then we are transported to the Secret Service. Some tall, dashing man gives the chief the runaround, while he and a shorter agent discuss who El Médico Asesino could be. Meanwhile, the goofy agent calls his grandma and yells, "Grandma, don't go out!" I was honestly not expecting this since the film is trying to be dark and mysterious. This is where I want to point out two tropes in lucha movies, specifically the Las Luchadoras series. One, the goofy sidekick. And two, although movies may be titled and named after an actor or luchador, they were often second fiddle. They didn't move the plot, which is a shame since it's such a cool concept left unused. Later films fixed this by hiring voice actors and making luchadores part of Interpol or integral to the investigation and our plot, but this definitely took some time. Then appear two men in robes, along with the gorilla man, Gomar. They enter a room with 5 men. They call the main henchman Marcado, which means scarred. The tall hooded man tells them he needs more young women for his experiments. He then tells Gomar the man-ape, they are his friends. You are his friends. You should listen to them. He repeats this 3 times. If Gomar didn't get it the first time, I don't know what would have changed by repeating it 3 more times. Who do we bring now? Some random person? Then El Médico gives a picture of the victim to the henchman. Somehow, El Médico has a headshot of the victim. Who knows how he found it, since this is before Facebook. But El Médico tells the men to remember the face while he holds on to the headshot for reasons. Back at the clean lab, the professor says hello to Alicia Floresta, who is still at work at 11 p.m. He insists it's way too late and offers to take her home. Why did the scientist come back to the lab at 11 p.m. if it's too late to work? The professor says Alicia deserves a raise. Does he just want to make sure the lab is empty? Anyway, Alicia says, nah, I have a ride, and rushes out without putting any of the chemicals away she was working with. But it's okay, it's the 1960s, and OSHA wasn't created until the 1970s. And this is Mexico. She says bye to Boris, the secretary, and leaves. Alicia lied. I guess she didn't want to hang out with her boss after work, because she's outside and she immediately gets kidnapped. For those in the know, they actually get picked up by an old school Mexican cab. Not the green VW buggies that became popular in the late 20th century, but the Ford Fairline Cocodrilo taxi. This has nothing to do with Lucha Libre, but it is cool to see. They drive into a police blockade. Gomar walks out covered in steel plates, and the police tell Gomar to call an ambulance. Gomar agrees, but says, not for me, and makes short work of the police. Back at El Médico's lab, the assistant walks in, and Gomar has Alicia Floresta. Scarface says Gomar took on 4 police by himself. While operating, the Médico says, another failure. Then he suggests maybe a robust, athletic woman. We get another headline as exposition. 4 police were taken out, and another kidnapping involving Alicia Floresta. Inspector Rojas asks if she has any family, and the tall agent says, just one sister. We cut to a gym with famed luchadora Gloria Venus. where the short agent is being a perv, looking at all the women. The tall agent tells Gloria the bad news. We get a cool shot of Venus being extra camp and looking at the camera. Gloria accompanies the agents to the morgue, where she cries and the handsome cop hugs her. Back at the lab, the professor retells the story of Alicia rejecting him. He is sad, but does not cry. That's suspicious. We get a shot of evil Medico Asesino telling his crew he needs strong-built women, but doesn't know where to find them. To be honest, same. El Ojo likes strong women, like Zeno, Princess Warrior. Cut to a gym with strong-built women, where we are introduced to Golden Ruby, an American who came to train in all things lucha. Meanwhile, a male luchador comes in and tries to take the only weight in the gym from the women, and pushes one. Probably a bad idea, especially since the girls beat him up mercilessly and dogpile him. To be fair, the gym is a giant room with a mat, one weight, and bars, so I understand why the women don't want to lose what little equipment they have. Gloria and Golden seem to enjoy the misandry and laugh at the male luchador. Inspector Rojas at the Secret Service gets a call and says, "No, I have no news," and hangs up. Then the agents walk in, and the short one says, "This is difficult. The women are all dead, and we have no idea who the killer is." That is literally your job to find out. Back at the locker room, Golden tells Gloria the girls are strong, but she sees sadness in Gloria's eyes and asks what's wrong. Gloria Venus tells her sister was assassinated, while Golden Ruby says, "I can help." Gloria Venus responds with, "Thanks, you're nice," and asks Golden, "Where are you staying?" Golden replies, "At the hotel." So Gloria Venus asks Golden to move in with her after one day of training. Some people sure move fast. Cut to a poster, and match number 2. Wrist lock by Venus, second wrist lock. Knee by Ruda, drops Venus, forearm to the back. Knee, kick. The professor watches from the front row, and the agents walk in and take a front row seat. The short one says, "You're only here to see Gloria." And not sure if this counts as banter, but the tall agent replies, "Shut up, insect." Back in the ring, Gloria wins with 2 arm drags and a weird arm hold. They win! The professor congratulates the girls after the match. Golden Ruby, dressed in 1960s attire, asks the professor, "Did you enjoy the match?" The professor says, "No." Then, Armando Gutierrez, the tall agent, and Chema say hello. Gloria introduces them, and Chema falls in love with Golden. The professor comes in and tells the girls one more thing Alicia said the night of the abduction. She had a new beau. To which Chema responds, "Algo es algo, dijo el diablo." With comments like that, you think he'd be a YouTube commentator. Am I right? The Secret Service says they will look into it. The professor, not wanting to be the fifth wheel, leaves, and Chema invites the girls to dinner. Later that night, the girls sleep in the same bedroom, but in different beds. They hear someone but pretend to be asleep when 2 men break in, so the luchadoras beat them up. There's a funny shot where Venus kicks a guy out of the window, and then in the next shot, she beats him up again, even though he just left. It reminds me of Boy Scouts in the Hood from The Simpsons, Season 5, Episode 8. Ruby wants to go after them, but Venus says it's too dangerous, even though they easily beat them up. Back at the bad guy's lair, they ask the boss, "Why didn't you tell us they were luchadoras?" El Medico Asesino says, "I finally found the perfect specimens, and you guys get beat up? You're useless." Some bosses really don't care. Venus and Ruby call Armando for help, and he brings Chema. They say they looked into her sister's boyfriend. He is not a suspect, but he was sad about the death. That sure is police work. Armando comes up with a genius plan to have the girls get kidnapped so they can locate the base. Meanwhile, Chema puts the moves on Ruby. The girls leave the gym one day, walking down a dark alley, probably Batman's crime alley because it's so dark and windows are broken. Ruby even remarks, "Did you hear that?" And Venus says, "We will surely get kidnapped." As they walk, some car puts on its headlight, and they are unsure if it's the bad guys. And out walks Gomar in steel-plated armor. Armando and Chema look on. Armando sends a radio message, "This is X3. Gomar karate chops the girls, and Armando wants to go save them. Oddly enough, Chema is the voice of reason, and says, "No, we need to see where they take the girls." So they follow the car. Back at the evil lair, El Medico is happy. Suddenly, they get an alert. For some reason, the lab is in a warehouse behind a secret door. Chema wants to leave due to fear, but Armando makes him stay. Chema accidentally knocks one guy out, but when Mini Medico punches Chema, he runs away. Venus wakes up and checks on Ruby while the guys are getting beat up. These are the type of women everybody needs in their life. They see you in a fight and don't ask questions, they just start throwing hands. Now that it's 4-on-4, the good guys win easily. Thankfully, more cops show up and arrest everyone. Newspaper headline, El Medico's gang arrested. It's Boris, his assistant. For some reason, the professor doesn't believe that Boris is El Medico Asesino. When asked where he is, Boris says El Medico and Gomar escaped. The girls are also in the lineup, and before Boris says anything, the chief says they will check to see if he died by natural causes. It turns out a needle was shot at Boris. It could be any of the 11 people in that room. Cut to El Medico? Is this more foreshadowing? Let's find out. Now El Medico only has one assistant, Scar, and he tells them you need more men. At the ladies' gym, some girls, including Carmela Camacho, wrestle blindfolded as Ruby and Venus look on. Armando and Chema walk in and give them communicator watches. Armando tells them never to take them off. The professor calls the police and asks to speak with the Secret Service. Luckily, Armando walks in and answers. Professor Ruiz is happy someone answered the phone as the gang from El Medico have him hostage. The agents go to Ruiz's lab. Outnumbered 2-1, the gang just beats up the cops and takes them as hostages. After they leave, Professor Ruiz makes a phone call. Ruby is spilling the tea to Venus. Venus answers the phone and says, "We're on it." The hooded men go to the evil lair, and El Medico Asesino says to leave them in the death room with Gomar, the man-ape. And El Medico pulls a lever, releasing spikes that push them into the cage with the man-ape hybrid. While driving around, Ruby seems the most sad. By the way, they are not using maps, they are following the sounds on their watch, so they turn a couple of times. They end up at the same lair from earlier, where they beat up the gang, which does make sense, because the cops only arrested the gang. They didn't actually look inside the building. The girls use a crowbar to break in, and when Ruby says, "What if Boris came back?" Venus says, "Para con tus gringadas," which is a polite way of saying, "Oh, you silly foreigner." Anyway, the girls hear the boys scream and let them out of the basement. Armando tells Ruby and Chema to beat up the guys. Upstairs, El Medico waits and beats up Armando. But Venus throws acid in El Medico's face, and the lab blows up. Gomar escapes and saves El Medico. El Medico reveals his face is scarred. Back at the gym, the police say the gym owner can't fight Carmela Camacho. Then we get a big surprise. El Medico is Professor Ruiz. He wants to use Gomar's brain to give Carmela Camacho strength. So they do a brain swap by putting needles in each other's head. Kinda makes you wonder why his previous patients didn't survive. The luchadora is brought back to life as Vendetta Machina, who has the strength of Gomar. Somehow, she can also listen to orders from a distance, psychically. This is shown when the professor tells her to break a table. I thought she was going to smash the table, instead she flips it. Side note, Vendetta is actually played by Chabela Romero, a legit luchadora. She plays both as Carmela and Vendetta in this film, and as herself in Las Luchadoras vs. La Momia Azteca. In wrestling, she had a storied rivalry against Irma Gonzalez. Who is Irma Gonzalez, you may ask? The famous luchadora posing with a cape from the 1960s. If you've seen the Lucha Libres band video, you begin to understand how Lucha Libre films are lost media piecing together what matches of the time were like. Those two actually had 3 luchas de apuestas against one another. But that is a story for another day. We are interrupted by a news reporter that announces there is a 25,000 USD challenge for the champion. Then El Medico comes in with a better mask and does not speak. He orders her to sign a contract. Golden Ruby tells Venus to be careful, and she gets a bad vibe from Vendetta. Match number 3, and your main event. Gloria has a long entrance, similar to that of The Undertaker. Carmela Camacho comes in, and the match is not that exciting as Vendetta just runs around the ring. During the match, Ruby sees Scar and beats him up. She also found out El Médico Asesino is Professor Luis. Golden Ruby jumps into the match, and instead of ending it, the referee does nothing. Ruby tells Armando that El Médico is Professor Luis, so they chase after him. Somehow he has telepathic communication with Vendetta, and calls for her to show up. She beats up the security on the way out, which was unnecessary since the old man was asleep. El Médico and Vendetta escape via the water tower as a crowd gather. They flash lights on them. Armando tries to talk, but they try to kick him off the water tower while the girls look on. Luckily, Chema is a good shot and eliminates Vendetta and El Médico. They both fall off the water tower. Armando tells Gloria, "Your sister is avenged." Fin. And that was the first in the Las Luchadoras film series. Also, before I let you go, I want to draw the characters in a different model. I want to do them more cartoony, more over the top, but I wanted to get your opinions. Would you like to see them more cartoony, or would you like to see them more realistically? Because the first few movies of this genre, they're mostly men in business suits. Even if they have cool names like Lobo or Dragon, it's people in suits. In addition to that question, how do you guys feel about a lucha meter? A rubric to judge lucha movies based on the heroes, the villains, the cameos, the actions, and something else. Do you guys like the Simpsons references, or should I reference other media? Why does Venus already have 2 beds in her bedroom? Did she know she was going to have another roommate? Was she actively looking for a roommate? Bienvenidos amigos and welcome back to Retro Lucha TV. This is your humblest of hosts on YouTube, the Great El Ojo. Welcome back to our second of 6 films in the Las Luchadoras Film Series, Las Luchadoras contra la Momia. It is also known as The Wrestling Women vs. the Aztec Mummy, not to be confused with La Momia Azteca trilogy, although they do share a lot of similarities. To be clear, in this movie they fight the mummy Tezomec, but in the Aztec film series, they fight Popoca. It is also an awesome trilogy, but we will cover that another day. Released in 1964 and directed by a favorite here, Cuban-born Rene Cardona, this film stars the great Lorena Velázquez and Miss Elizabeth Campbell as the 2 luchadoras, Loretta, aka Gloria Venus, and Golden Ruby. We also have the return of Arturo and Chema, although in this film, he is referred to as Chucho. Before I go any further, I do want to point out that some of the characters' designs may be similar to previous reviews. This is mostly due to this channel being run by one person, so for time-saving purposes, I will try and reuse as many previous assets as possible. It also helps with continuity. That being said, this film is actually the lowest rated film in the Las Luchadoras film series, with a 4.3 on IMDb. Does it deserve that low rating? Let's find out. Opening scene, the ruins of Teotihuacan. Title, Las Luchadoras contra la Momia. Just a side note, Teotihuacan was not built by the Aztec or Mexica. In fact, by the time the Mexica found Teotihuacan, it was already abandoned. But the Mexica, much like the Romans, used architecture of a much older civilization, and used it in the construction of their city, Tenochtitlan. The city was built on a lake where an eagle ate a serpent on a cactus, which still exists to this day. But it is better known as Mexico City, or CDMX if you're young. Also, for this review, I will be saying Aztec, as that is what is said in the film, but Aztecs call themselves Mexica. Back in the city, there is a black car driving fast through the city, and a body falls out. A newspaper headline reads, Dragón Negro strikes. Then, we get a shot of a car in the desert, and a body rolls out. Another newspaper headline, Dragón Negro strikes again. Dr. Sorba stands on a street corner and hails a taxi and tells him to hurry, they're chasing me. He gets dropped off at the lucha arena. Then a white car pulls up and a gang of men go inside. Match number 1, women's tag team match, as Armando and Chema look on. This match is literally the same footage from Las Luchadoras contra el Médico. Funny enough, Venus has different hair every time she's on the apron. Of course, the girls win the match as they are the heroes. After the match, Dr. Michael Sorba hides in the locker room in plain sight. He needs help. He is looking for Armando. Thankfully, Armando walks in the locker room, and Dr. Sorba tells Armando he needs to go to his uncle's apartment. He explains that Sorba and Armando's uncle are the 2 remaining scientists out of 5 who found the Aztec Codex that leads to the Aztec treasure. Now the evil gang led by Dragón Negro is after the Codex. Meanwhile, eyes look on through the window, and a dart hits Dr. Sorba. He is sent to the eternal sleep. Inspector Rojas appears and confirms he will not wake up. At the Dragon's Lair, Prince Fujiata, an obvious Mexican actor doing yellowface, is revealed. We also meet the Black Dragon Gang. The henchman Mao is played by Jesus Murcielago Velázquez, which is why he looks like a vampire. The bald handler is played by Frankenstein Nathaniel Leon, which is why I drew him to look like Frankenstein. The world champion judo sisters are dressed as geishas, and one is definitely Chabela Romero. We also have one real Asian actor, Mishima Ota, born in Fukuoka, Japan, and went on to become the Mexican national lightweight champion. According to LuchaWiki, he suffered a head injury in 1967 and would never wrestle again. He would pass away in 1970 due to a different illness. There are also other actors, but the quality in the film is so grainy, it is hard to distinguish wrestlers are who. But the credits include Irma Gonzalez, Reyes Oliva, Doña La Tapatía, Martha Guerra Solis, Madelina Baballero, Roquisito, who is the other Asian henchman, but he's actually Mexican. Pause. Now, here at Retro Lucha TV, I have 2 issues with this. Number 1, just hire an Asian actor. Yes, Mexico has an Asian population, do not at me. And 2, probably the most offensive part, creatively speaking. In these early films, the villain is some man in a suit. So in the spirit of Lucha, I'm going to add a mask. Nope. Definitely no. Ooh. But no. Yes, this is the one. And for those keen viewers thinking, hey, that's just Shenron painted black, I have one thing to say. Moving on. Our campeones go to Dr. Treyes' apartment, along with Chela Sorban. Treyes tells him that Chela is alone, and is living with him for safety. Pause. Chela is Sorban's daughter. She was already living with him before he died. There's only one bed in the apartment. Were they shagging? What a bad friend. I'm not gonna think about this. The uncle explains to Armando and the girls that when the gang attacked, they ripped off part of the codex, and the dragon already has one part of the codex. So, in his genius 3D chess move, he will divide the codex into 3 pieces to protect it. I do not understand how separating the codex into 3 pieces only to bring it back later will protect the codex. If everyone is already there, why not just stay together and fortify your position? Anywho, the professor leaves in a trench coat. Meanwhile, back at Dr. Treyes' apartment, the Black Dragon gang finds Chela. Treyes is still walking in an alley. The girls come back, then Armando. They find a note saying Dr. Treyes went to hide the codex. But Chela is missing. Treyes goes to some random apartment, and the codex was under a rock the whole time. He cuts the codex in 3 pieces. He puts part 1 into a lockbox labeled 100. He puts the second part in a locker at the Lucha Arena. Then he stops by a hotel. Then he goes to a hat shop, then a flower shop. Back at the Dragon's Lair, Dragón Negro injects Chela with LSD, or something, so he can now hypnotize her. At the apartment, Chucho gets a present, and asks if it's cheese. And sees a sombrero, and he puts it on, and proceeds to yell like Speedy Gonzales. Meanwhile, a camera that was placed in plain sight looks on. Armando and Chucho are terrible spies. There was a key in the hat, and they send Chucho and Golden to get the first piece of the map at Hotel Rio. But, since they are being spied on, they get jumped. Armando and Gloria come to the realization that sending half your team when a gang is after you is a terrible idea. So they also go. But it's a trap! However, now that it is 3-on-6, they beat them up very easily, and take 2 of them back to the Secret Service. But Dragón Negro now has 2 of the 4 pieces of the codex. Meanwhile, the leader of the gang, Mao, tells Dragón Negro that 2 of his men were captured, and Dragón Negro laughs it off and says, they know not to say anything. Back at the Secret Service, Inspector Rojas and Armando start interrogating. But they get news that one guy went to the Shadow Realm. Meanwhile, the one they were talking to takes a sleeping dart. At the apartment, Chucho is sleeping and is attacked by Chela. Someone opens the door and Dragón Negro tells her over the radio to beat up whoever comes in. She one-shots Golden, but Venus takes her down. Fortunately for Dragón Negro, Chela darts Venus and she passes out. While Chela lies on the floor, El Dragón Negro tells her to hide her microphone. A delivery boy comes by and drops off flowers with a note for the next location of the codex. For some reason, Dragón Negro tells her to go to the lockbox, but Mao is the one who retrieves the second part of the codex. For the fourth and final piece, Armando finds the location by triangulating the previous two places of the codex, and somehow finds it and thinks it's at the Lucha Arena. And he's correct. So our heroes go together to the locker room, but they meet the Black Dragon gang. They all start fighting and Armando leaves with one part of the codex, but comes back and says he will burn part of his codex if they don't stop fighting. El Dragón Negro then offers a challenge: the Judo Sisters versus Las Luchadoras. When they ask how they can trust the Dragón Negro, he says, I, Príncipe Fujiyata, swearer to Fujin, the Lord of the Seven Moon, and on the ashes of my ancestors, and to Mitsukaya, not to let him into heaven, where the lords of the heavens hold him to his vows. What a long way to say, trust me, bro. And I thought Sun Wukong was long-winded. Also, I'm not sure if this is what they were going for, but Fujin is an actual Japanese deity. The sisters practice judo and dress as geishas. My point is, I think they're supposed to be Japanese. Armando agrees to the bout, but Golden says they need to return Chela to our heroes. Chela is not a puppy. And this part made me laugh. Venus questions Armando, why didn't you call the police to arrest him now? Armando responds, no. Dragón Negro is too smart. We will compete and then arrest them. Kinda seems like Venus's plan, but with extra steps. In Armando's defense, he does mention if Dragón Negro is arrested now, they will still be missing one part of the codex. Match number 2 for 2 out of 3 falls for the codex. Venus and Ruby versus Lien and Sue. Dragón Negro and Mao look on from the crowd, and so do Armando and Chucho. It is at this point I do want to give some background to some of the characters. Armando is actually played by Armando Silvestre, an American-born actor who acted from 1952 to 2016, with a cameo in 1977's Wonder Woman in the episode titled 407, Season 1, Episode 12, as Antonio Cruz. 4 lucha cameos: Irma González, Chabela Romero, Marta Solís, Jesus Murcielago Velázquez, Mishima Ota, Uroquisito, Reyes Oliva, and Nathaniel León. Many of these wrestlers would go on to star in several films. Nathaniel León alone would star in 152 projects. Anywho, the match is fine. It is acted out. There's some beautiful hip tosses, good arm drags, and Elizabeth Campbell takes a nice bump. Good for her. I eventually realized the girls are using stunt doubles. No hate on the film, but anytime the technicas are filmed from behind or doing a quick fast move, it's a stunt double. At ringside, Chela, Chucho, and Armando are talking. The girls are tied 1-1, and the next round is sudden death. Chucho asks, do you think I'm stupid or pessimistic? And Armando, with that famous banter, says, you're both those things. But I also don't see how the girls can beat their Asian opponents. Anywho, back in the ring, the judo girls beat up the ref, and still no DQ. You may be asking why I'm still talking about the match, and that is because it goes on for a solid 10 minutes. I'm not mad because they actually showcase wrestling. I would have preferred to see El Santo, but that's just me. After the match, the girls are thanked by Chela, and the professor, Armando, and Chucho walk in. Pause. All the couples hug. And Reyes hugs Chela. Are they a couple? Doesn't matter. Then the prince and Mao walk in. And not going to lie, the prince is actually very polite. He says the girls are good, and gives them the missing pieces of the codex, and leaves. As he walks out, Armando and Chucho double-cross Dragón Negro and Mao. Meanwhile, the judo champs are outside the locker room, and quickly do a U-turn and run away. Chucho threatens Dragón Negro, but he says no, I would just go. But it's another trap! The girls jump Armando and Chucho. He yells, hurry, let's go, my sisters will take care of these idiots. Mao asks Dragón Negro if he should organize the men. Dragón says, no, it is easier to allow the field to empty to win. I feel like he is trying to be wise, but it just sounds kind of dumb. Back at the apartment, our heroes ask the professor if he can decipher the codex, while everyone literally does anything else. Chucho and Ruby play chess, and everyone else plays cards, while Venus is smoking. And Dr. Treyes is smoking. Don't smoke, kids. One eternity later, we get Lore Time, the great story written by Popoca. Yes, that is the name of the mummy from the La Momia Azteca film trilogy. Is it related at all? Yes. No. Most likely no, but let's say it is. Anywho, Grand Tlacateca, written Popoca, of the Confederation of the Pueblos Aztecas, about the true story of the life and death of the Nahual, Tezamoc, and his true love, Xochi. Golden Ruby, being a foreigner, asks, what does Nahual mean, Professor?
To which the professor responds, based on the book Diccionario General de Americanismos and the Diccionario Mexicanismo by Francisco J. Santamaria. The professor explains that Nahual comes from the word Nahuali, which means bruja or witch. Also, just want to point out that this book is real and does exist. I was not able to locate a copy on Amazon. Darn you, Jeff Bezos. The copies I was able to find were really expensive. But if you have read the book, leave a comment below. Anywho, the professor explains that the Nahual is a shape-shifting witch that can take the forms of snakes, tigers, and balls of fire. Which is strange because tigers aren't even native to the Americas. Then he tells the story of the Codex. He swears this tale to Mixtecatli, god of death, and of the dead and the underworld. We get a view of Tenochtitlan, and we zoom into Teotihuacan. The tribes of the eagles and jaguars ruled an empire with doncellas. They had a culture of warriors, art, and music. Of all the princesses, Xochi, which means flower by the way, had the kingdom exist to serve her, but she was destined to be sacrificed, a high honor for the kingdom. Her life was destined to Tocuatle, in honor of Coatlicue. She was to be sacrificed in 8 moons, and to protect her, she would be sealed in the Grand Teocalli, or pyramid. You know, this movie may have gotten its Asian cultures mixed up, but they do a pretty solid job with their Aztec mythos. As I was saying, before she was sacrificed, the Nahual Tezomoc did not want her to die. However, Xochi did not want the wrath of Coatlicue, so Tezomoc stole her, but they were punished. Xochi was tied up and Tezomoc was bound with a mask. Apparently, magic radiates from the eyes, and if you can't see, you can't do magic. Xochi was sacrificed, but not in honor of the gods, but as punishment, and on her chest lay a chest plate with a map of the Aztec treasure. Tezomoc was buried alive and sentenced to guard the chest piece, and his damned soul never knowing peace. Wait a minute, a magic sorcerer from an ancient pyramid-based civilization runs off with the princess and is buried alive? Where have I seen this before? Doesn't matter. This story is about Tezomoc the Nahual and his true love Xochi. The Black Dragon tells Mao, never in my life have I heard something so dumb. The team decides to look for the treasure, and the uncle interjects, don't forget the curse. Anyone who robs from the grave and steals a chest plate will be hunted by them and all their bloodline until the chest piece is returned. Armando asks, you don't really believe that, do you, uncle? The uncle, sounding like Scully from the X-Files, says, there are supernatural mysteries beyond science that man cannot comprehend. Black Dragon turns off the TV and tells Mao, you know what needs to be done. We are transported outside of the Pyramid of the Sun. A gold car pulls up, and the Black Dragon gang looks on from a distance. Our protagonist arrives, and for some reason, there's a lot of walking, but it's a pyramid. There are only 4 sides. Anywho, they find a random wall and break into the pyramid. Please do not do this when you visit ancient sites. One of the henchmen tells Mao, the heroes found the entrance, and Mao says we will go back to the lair and regroup. But the henchmen ask, why not get them now? Mao says, shut up. Our heroes are in a dark tunnel. But this film is black and white, so you can't see anything. We return to the sacrifice room from the story. Now dusty and faded, they find a skeleton with a chest plate. Chucho asks if the bones with the chest plate is dead. And the banter must be genetic because Dr. Treya says, stupid. They rip the pendant off Xochi. Then, out of the crypt, comes the mummy Tezomoc. Pause. This movie is black and white, and the mummy is a skeleton. So I'm going to change his coloring so that it looks way better. There we go. Good thing he doesn't resemble any Motu properties. Anywho, Tezomoc wakes up and yells, and hot dog so long the crew is actually able to escape, no problem. Back at the uncle's apartment, everyone is scared because of the mummy. The professor tells everyone to leave, so Chela and him can help figure out what the pendant says. Why does the professor need to be alone with Chela? Would the extra security not be helpful? The Black Dragon gang decides to steal the pendant from the professor. Meanwhile, outside the apartment, a bat turns into a mummy. The Black Dragon gang appears outside, and the mummy politely invites them to the Shadow Realm. The mummy turns into a bat again and tries to invite the professor and Chela to the Shadow Realm as well, but the sun comes up, and he has to return to the pyramid. I'm guessing he is like a gargoyle? Newspaper headline reads, the Black Dragon gang is exterminated by mysterious circumstances. Chela says, I knew this would happen. I call BS. Why didn't you say anything earlier? She convinces Chucho to go with her and return the chess piece, because during the day, the mummy rests. So he is a gargoyle. Chela goes missing, and instead of looking for her, Chucho goes back to the city for reinforcement. Meanwhile, at the pyramid, Chela is still walking around. It reminds me of that scene from The Simpsons from season 6, episode 21, where that girl is in the gym, our heroes come back as the sun set, which actually makes perfect sense since Teotihuacan is like an hour outside of Mexico City. And with traffic, forget about it. Anywho, the mummy, much like me, is a night person and wakes up at sunset. He takes Chela and prepares to sacrifice her. Our heroes walk in and start blasting. But Ruby and Venus, instead of fighting a supernatural creature, use fire to scare him. He turns into a bat and attacks him, then turns into a mummy, then vanishes, then turns into a spider. The group jumps the mummy and tie him with chains to a pillar. See, he can't use his power because his eyes are covered. Decimo breaks one of the support beams and the temple implodes. The professor says, "This should be the end. The treasure of the Aztecs will be lost for many more centuries." Fin. So, does this film deserve the title of the worst luchadora film? Yes. No. Maybe. I do not have a lucha meter, so it's hard to gauge. Obviously, this film has yellow face, which is bad. Not a discussion, this is a statement. The film is also a bit slow, but features some cool shots of Teotihuacan and Aztec lore. It also has a cool villain. But at the end of the day, the choice is up to you, the viewer. Would I rewatch this film? Yes. Would I recommend it? No. But tell me, should I rate movies? If so, what should I use to rate them? You can leave your comment below, and I will do my best to respond. Stick with us, lucha fans, for our next film, Las Lobas del Ring, a tournament-style movie for 1 million pesos, because there are a lot more luchas de tres caídas coming your way. Where's the Aztec treasure? If the mummy really killed the Japanese prince, would that not cause an international incident? Why not hand the codex over to the Secret Service to protect it? Buenos dias, amigos. It is I, the man without a face, El Ojo. Today we are on our third film of the Las Luchadoras Film Series, titled Las Lobas del Ring. Filmed in 1965, this film is directed by René Cardona and starring Lorena Velázquez and Elizabeth Campbell. Unfortunately, this is Lorena's last appearance as Gloria Venus, allegedly due to her boyfriend at the time not being a fan of her making movies. Lorena Velázquez would eventually come back and star as a villain opposite the legendary masked luchador El Santo. But fear not, we still have 3 films left in the series, those being Las Mujeres Panteras, Las Luchadoras contra el Robot Asesino, and the final film in the series, La Repelente Bestia Humana. Before we get started, I have a question. Do you like the movie Bloodsport? Mortal Kombat? A tournament of the best fighters in the world competing for a prize of 1 million pesos. Well, you're in luck. This film includes 2 teams of female técnicas and rudas in a tournament-style movie. It is the second highest rated luchadora film in the series with a 5.4 on IMDb. Let the tournament begin. The title card, Las Lobas del Ring. A room full of men in suits. Mr. Delphine has brought wrestling promoters from across the country together. Mr. Delphine explains he has a plan for a national tournament, with a finale at the capital, and a 1 million peso cash prize. The promoters can make money from the hype of the tournament, and have elimination matches at each of their respective arenas. All the men agree, and are excited to participate, and begin promoting the tournament on TV and radio. A newsboy is on a street corner, announcing the tournament. 2 people pass by, and we get our first reoccurring joke of the movie. Some guy who looks like Capulina, but is definitely not Capulina, says, "Quiero sangre," which means, "I want blood." As the fan explains, blood is the reason he prefers men's matches over women's. This joke would have been funny if it was used sparingly. It is not. Lorena Venus, who had a name change in Las Luchadoras contra la Momia, go check that out if you haven't already, walks into some kind of convention with the wrestling promoter, and Goldie and Ruby says hello. The other women walk in. Suzuki, Tonya, Chabela, Marlena, with her boo, Nacho. This is where we get our second and third reoccurring joke of the movie. The second joke is Marlena is long-winded and tells terrible poems. The third is Marlena and Nacho are a honeymooners couple, but Marlena is the mean one. and instead of quips, she beats up Nacho. Also, in this scene, she threatens Nacho because he is late with her pills and begins to emotionally manipulate him. Cut to the men's gym, where Suzuki and Chavela ask the men for help. And holy birthday cake, Batman! We get a bunch of cameos, including but not limited to El Cavernario Galindo, Murcielago Velázquez, who's been the main henchman in our previous 3 reviews, Black Shadow, maskless, Doyle Dixon, and Rey Mendoza. Yes, that Rey Mendoza, who is the patriarch of the famous lucha family Los Villanos of WCW fame. In fact, this film has more wrestlers listed in the credits: El Hombre Montaña, Chavela Romero, Irma Gonzalez, Gerardo Cepeda. It is also hard to see these wrestlers since the film is grainy, and this film is considered lost media. So if there are any wrestlers I missed, leave a comment below. Back to the film. In a training ring, we have a rookie named Irma, who gets in the ring with La Pantera. But Pantera beats her up. Tonya, another heel, or Ruda, is nice enough to give us exposition and tell everyone Pantera has been wrestling for 20 years and abandoned her true love to chase money. I guess money doesn't buy happiness. Venus and Ruby walk in and, like the good protagonist, tell Pantera to stop beating up Irma. Venus even jumps in the ring and squares up to Pantera, foreshadowing a third act that never materializes, while Marlena cheers on. Thankfully, Suzuki and male luchadores walk in and break up the fight. Murcielago reminds the girls that an unsanctioned fight will bar them from the tournament, so the Rudas walk away. There's actually a fun little cameo in the background. One of the luchadoras is actually wearing an off-colored Santo mask. As the ring clears, Cavernario hits on Venus, but Marlena defends Venus' honor due to reasons. After the scuffle, we see Chavela and Irma train with Murcielago and Rey Mendoza. They actually beat up the men with relative ease, and she's rough. I do want to point out, since this movie is in black and white, it is very hard to differentiate people. They have the same haircuts and wear the same black bodysuits. We also get the groundwork for the B-plot. Marlena trains with men, as she wants revenge on Bernardo, the man who killed her father and is now free, and his brother to Sonia, La Borrada. Marlena swears if she sees him, she will take revenge. Venus, along with her boyfriend Luciano and Golden Ruby, are eating dinner. By the way, I am not changing the design of these characters since I hand draw these and they take time to draw. Venus gives exposition. She wants to wrestle to support her mom, and Luciano asks her to marry him. Venus says, "No, I want to earn my own money and be a millionaire." Good for her. Then comes Golden Ruby's boyfriend, Pompin. The couple starts to dance, and Ruby carries Pompin, but some random man comes to defend the honor of Pompin. Because in the 1960s, men couldn't be offended by women, so Golden Ruby beats him up for being nosy. At Marlena's house, she is like any great Aztec warrior, a fighter and a poet, but unlike the great Netzacoyotl, her poems stink. Even her boyfriend makes fun of them, so Marlena orders him to shut up. She does more stand-up poetry before beating up Nacho, Misandry. After, she tells him cutesy stuff before beating and choking him. Emotional manipulation. I feel like I should call the authorities. This is toxic behavior. We are at some random dance with really good groovy music. I couldn't find the title. I tried. All the male luchadores are at House Technica. Venus tells Marlena and the other girls that if one of the Technicas wins the tournament, the winner should share the prize. All the girls agree and celebrate. Meanwhile, at the villain's house, we see the leader, Sonia, La Borradora, monologue her plan, and we are officially introduced to Casa Ruda, the masked villain, Vendetta. No, not from Las Luchadoras contra el Médico Asesino. The veteran powerhouse, Pantera, and Tonya, and possibly Sonia's evil brother, Bernardo. They are going to cheat so someone on their team can share the prize. Bernardo is played by Eric del Castillo. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he is the father of legendary actress Kate del Castillo. You may remember her from such projects including Under the Same Moon, La Reina del Sur, and Bad Boys for Life. Does this have anything to do with Lucha Libre? No, but Kate del Castillo is an amazing actress. Tonya convinces Bernardo to help the girls cheat by flirting. At Venus' mom's house, her mom asks, "When will you leave the ring?" A very supportive mother, if I ever heard one. Venus' mom is afraid Venus will be injured. Match number 1, por dos de tres caídas. Venus versus Vendetta. This is not a rematch. We do get the reoccurring joke where the fan yells, "I want blood." And his friend tells him, "Shut up, you sound like a vampire." The match is typical. Arm drag, and for variety, another arm drag. Venus wins the match. Luciano tells Ruby and Pimpon he wants to leave because he didn't want to see the match, even though Venus won with ease. Bernardo tells his henchman that he plans to intimidate House Technica by abducting Suzuki. Outside House Technica one evening, Suzuki says bye to Marlena, Nacho, and Venus, and Chabela. Marlena beats up Nacho after he compliments her, while Suzuki walks in an alley. She gets jumped. She takes on 3 men with ease, until the 4th man pistol whips her. The next day, Venus and Ruby make out with their boyfriends at a park, while Sonia and Bernardo plot. Back at House Technica, the girls are looking nervous, wondering what happened to Suzuki. Marlena tells a bad poem. Venus says, focus on the match. Match number 2, por 12 tres caídas. Marlena la Poesía versus Toña Rubio. Toña, being the ruda, attacks when Marlena turns her back. Toña wins, which I think is fair, seeing as Marlena is not only physically abusive, but emotionally, especially to her husband. Newspaper headline, Toña advances in tournament, Suzuki loses by default. Back at Casa Ruda, Sonia and her brother are planning on backstabbing the other baddies, but Toña says she doesn't trust anyone when it comes to money, and storms off. Bernardo tries to stop Toña from leaving, but Sonia stops Bernardo, then immediately changes her mind and yells, "Go get her!" Bernardo tries to stop Toña from telling the police, but when that doesn't work, a newspaper headline reads, "Sonia found, not alive." Geez, I wonder what happened. At House Technica, the cops are asking if Toña had any enemies. Not sure why you wouldn't ask her friends, the Rudas. Venus notices a black car outside House Technica and says it's Bernardo, Sonia's brother, who killed Chapela's dad. Bernardo sends one of his henchmen to disappear Suzuki, and tells him Alfonso will follow him in case he needs anything. But it's a trap! He tells Alfonso to eliminate the henchman after the job is done. Fun fact, Alfonso is actually played by Frankenstein Nathaniel Leon, a legit wrestler, and the main henchman to Bernardo. He actually appears in 14 lucha movies, usually opposite El Santo Blue Demon, Capulina, Chanok, and Huracan Ramirez. Match number 3, Sonia La Borrada vs Chabela Romero. Or duo, the male wrestlers and Bernardo are at ringside, but Bernardo sees Chabela. She becomes distracted and Sonia takes full advantage. The fan wants blood, and Sonia wins the match by distraction. At Bernardo's hideout, he tells his sister she is not allowed at the clubhouse, so the police won't come looking for them. She encourages Bernardo to eliminate the competition. Bernardo says Suzuki had to disappear, and once Alfonso eliminates the henchman, Bernardo will eliminate Alfonso. Now this is something I do like, Rudos not getting along. Back at House Technica, Loretta gives Golden Ruby a pep talk about her match with La Pantera. Match number 4, La Pantera vs Golden Ruby. I kind of feel like I'm watching a late episode of WCW Nitro. Long segments, 2-minute matches. Is this Nitro or Monday Night Raw during the Divas era? Am I right? Golden Ruby wins, by the way. So we do now get the Pantera vs Venus match, which was set up in the first act. The news reporter announces that there are 16 luchadoras left in the 1 million peso tournament. And we get the names of competitors we never heard of before or after. Match number 5, Marina Rey vs Lidio. Lidio wins. Our announcer then lets us know that there are 8 women left in this Queen of the Ring. Match number 6, Lidia vs Irma from House Technica. I kind of feel like the matches with no name should have gone first, and have the established characters defeat the no-names, so that the competition could build rivalries and add weight leading into the third act. But what do I know? El Ojo is just a 2D avatar. Now the announcer gives exposition for the next match, Marta Solis vs Dalia Negra. Meanwhile, Sonia, Golden Ruby, and Loretta Venus remain in the tournament. What's this? Sonia and Irma are actually working together. Sonia orders Irma to get Golden Ruby drunk. Match number 7, Sonia La Borrada versus Golden Ruby. The winner faces Loretta. Ruby is stumbling and loses. At the men's gym, we get Murcielago and Cavernario talking about how one of the girls is about to be a millionaire. And they also talk about the futility of life. Kind of a sad scene, really. So they start wrestling. And go rough, to the point where everyone else is concerned if this is a shoot. But like any good combat sport, they hug it out after. I kind of feel like this was included to get around the censors since they are sparring and not having an actual match. It's also nice to see the wrestlers show personality, as most of the time they're just background characters or henchmen. We get another promo for the main event. At Venus's mom's house, Luciano and Pimpon agree to go with Venus to the arena, and Golden Ruby will stay at Venus's mom's house. Venus and the boys leave, but 3 men break into the apartment. Ruby takes on 3 of them until Venus's mom comes out from her room, and Ruby gets knocked out from behind. Meanwhile, at the locker room, Pimpon asks Venus if she wants a swig. Venus says no, I have never drank. Pimpon says me neither, and begins drinking. As Irma and Luciano look on, Loretta's mom and Ruby are taken to Bernardo's lair. In Sonia's locker room, she orders an old man to give Venus a letter. Once Venus receives the letter, she goes into the hallway and calls a strange number. It's her mom! Venus goes to Sonia's dressing room and Sonia says, your mom is safe, as long as you lose. Sonia goes after the match and tells Venus that she will win the first match, but Venus will lose the second round, and the third. Match number 8 and final match of the evening, con 2 de 3 caídas, Sonia la Borrada versus Loretta Venus. The fans boo because it's a bad match. Chabela and Bernardo look on. Back at the bad guy's lair, the gang watches the match, and Alfonso says they will kill the women when the match is over. Meanwhile, the gang is so distracted that Ruby calls the male luchadors for help. They break through the windows and beat up the gang. Ruby and Venus's mom take a cab to the arena. Back at the arena, Venus is being thrown around like que monito. Venus's mom and Ruby walk in, and with the power of parental approval, Venus beats Sonia. Bernardo sees the writing on the wall and flees. Chabela chases after him and beats him in the hallway. She punches him so hard he flies through a door and lands on a generator and explodes. Back at House Technica, everyone shows up to celebrate. Marlena wants to do poetry, but her husband Nacho hits her with a flower pot. Everyone laughs. Nacho stands proud, like the SpongeBob episode Wormy from Season 2, Episode 25, when SpongeBob says, we did it, Patrick. We saved the city. Meanwhile, Suzuki and Bernardo are in the Shadow Realm, Venus and Ruby's mom were abducted, and Chabela definitely murdered someone. Finn. And that was Luchadora Bloodsport. Since we are halfway through the film series, I wanted to ask the fans a question. Who should our next series be about? You can vote by leaving a comment below. Would you like to see Neutron, Los Campeones Justicieros, Huracán Ramírez, Super Zan, Sovek, La Sombra Vengadora? The name that appears the most in the comments will be the winner. So tell your friends to drop a comment below. And stay tuned because there are a lot more luchas de tres caídas coming your way. Why was the generator inside of an arena? It's on the first floor. It kind of seems like a safety hazard.
Buenos dias amigos, and welcome back to Retro Lucha TV. It is I, the undefeated luchador with a record of 0 losses, 0 wins, and 0 ties, El Ojo. We are back with the 4th film in the Las Luchadoras Film Series, with the title Las Mujeres Panteras. Released in 1967 and directed by Rene Cardona, this is actually the last film in the series starring Elizabeth Campbell. Unfortunately, this film does not include the great Lorena Velázquez returning to reprise her role as Gloria Venus. She would be replaced by Ariadne Welter for her one and only appearance in the film series. But this film does feature a villain played by Yolanda Montes, also known as Tongolele, an American-born actress who also starred in the 1971 Boris Karloff film Isle of the Snake People. She passed away earlier this year. May she rest in peace. So, does this film deserve the title of the best film in the Las Luchadoras film series? Let's find out. We get a deco title card of Las Mujeres Panteras over previous matches. Opening shot, a panther's lair with cool pyro. It actually looks like they put money and effort into designing the set. There are so many people and cool effects like fire and smoke, and even lightning. The main sorceress, Eda, says, "O Satanasa, ruler of darkness, spirit of evil, us, the creatures at your service, call upon you for strength." The sorcerer gives exposition by telling Tongolele, 200 years ago the grand priest Elohim was killed by the flaming sword, by the warrior named Pietra Santa, or Holy Stone in English. And Elohim was sentenced to the Shadow Realm. She explains that over the centuries, the bloodline has been dwindled by the Panther cult. But there remain 4 members of the bloodline. Tongolele nods in agreement. We also get a shot of Nathaniel Leon Frankenstein in the background, as a wrestler, not a monster. Match number 1, tag team match between the team of Ruby and New Venus. No, I am not changing the design. I'm keeping the design since she is supposed to be the same character, and it takes time to hand draw these. Do not at me. During the match, 2 men look on. The girls win, of course. I would expect nothing less. Venus introduces the men as her cousin, Ramon Holystone, and uncle, Professor Rafael Holystone. Ramon invites the ladies to dinner. At the club, we get our first exotic dance of the evening. It's Tongolele. Tongolele does a nice routine as our heroes look on. The cousin starts with small talk and asks Venus, "When will you get married?" Venus replies, "Now's not the time. What about you?" Her cousin says, "No one would want a widower," which is true. He then proceeds to introduce everyone to his fiancée, the dancer Tongolele. Kind of feels like his cousin was flexing. At the Holy Stone house, he explains that the visit to Loretta Venus has a serious undertone, as he got a letter. They are in danger. Venus asks if this is a joke. Theo says, "This is from a time of magic." Ramon says, "You're a man of science. You can't believe this." To which the Theo says, "There are things science cannot explain." Kind of seems like the professor is not a man of science. Theo Professor Rafael takes them to his library, where he pulls out a sword used by the Druids, and reads to them a book of the occult from the 16th century. Lore time, the founder of the Panther clan, who still worship to this day, the Grand Priest Elohim, had leprosy and wore a mask to hide his sickness. In Croatia, he assembled an army of darkness so that his Panther women can take over the world. But the mage, Hector Holystone of Turin, read the stars and with a fire sword defeated Elohim. But as Elohim lay dying, he cursed Hector and promised to return to take the last woman in his bloodline and drag her to hell for all eternity. You know, it's probably not a great idea to make cartoony characters with adult subject matter. Theo says the last of the bloodline include him, Ramon, and Ramon's daughter. Wait, isn't Venus in the family? How does the professor know his granddaughter won't have any kids? Anyway, Golden Ruby asks, what kind of magic do they follow? He says the Panther cult follow the god Bast, protector of King Khufu. Elohim's followers could turn into panthers and enact revenge. I actually looked into this. Apparently, in the Great Pyramid of King Khufu, they actually found a statue of Bast, or Basset. Nothing to do with Lucha, just accurate lore. Which is surprising because half the stuff they make up is nonsense. At the cemetery, the sorceress Edith walks alone. She opens the door to a crypt without touching it. She goes inside the crypt and lights everything with a wag of her finger. It's the coffin of Elohim. The sorceress Edda opens the coffin and says, his wish is her command. The uncle, who's still reading after everyone's left, goes to his granddaughter's room and places the fire sword on her chest. Kind of seems like a bad place to put a mystical weapon. She can cut herself if she rolls over. Then the professor goes to his bedroom. But it's a trap! A panther woman attacks him. At the girls' gym, Secret Service agent Arturo, played by Eric del Castillo, finds Loretta Venus and tells her her tío is dead. At Casa Pantera, the sorceress Edda tells the other women about Professor Rafael. The girls live, laugh, and murder. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Venus and Ruby wait with Ramon and Tongolele. Arturo tells them the bad news, that the professor was killed by some big cat. Then Arturo asks Venus if her uncle had any enemies, to which Venus repeats the plot from earlier. Arturo dismisses her claim by saying, extraordinary. And Venus exclaims she wants to be part of the investigation, no matter what he says. He says, that is fine. I just need to ask a friend for help. Remember, it's the 1960s. You could join police investigations by asking, and police needed help from friends. Cut to match number 2. El Ángel versus El Cavernario. This is peak camp. El Ángel returns to the locker room and gets a call on his communicator watch from Arturo. And they go meet in his lab. El Ángel is meant to be a Santos stand-in, and as much as I love the cameo, I do concede it takes away from Las Luchadoras as protagonist. Also, fun fact, El Ángel is played by Ángel de Stefani, an Italian-born actor who played Popoca in the Mommy Azteca film trilogy.
He would also have smaller roles in Santo vs. Capulina, the Látigo Negro film Con la misma moneda, and Neutrón el enmascarado negro. These are all films I will go over sooner than later. Thankfully, we don't need to hear the plot again, but we find out they have teamed up in the past. Arturo will watch the girls, and Angel will watch Ramon. We also find out that Angel invented the communicator watches they use, and even invented a bulletproof and fireproof cape for materials used by astronauts. Arturo takes the elevator and leaves. Ramon and Tongo go back to the professor's place, and Tongo tries to eat the pet bird, but the bird gets a heart attack. Ramon comes back with his daughter, Paquita, but Tongo is nowhere to be found. She was hiding in the closet to scare them. Ramon tries to introduce Tongo to Paquita, but Paquita runs away because she doesn't want a stepmom. I will say, this scene is kind of funny. They show Tongo from an unflattering angle, which is meant to be scary, but she just looks like she smelled a fart. Ramon drops off Tongolele and asks her for forgiveness since Paquita ran away. Then he gets in his car and leaves. El Ángel shows up, and like Batman, eavesdrops on Tongo. Inside Casa Pantera, the sorceress asks Tongo why she does not have Ramon's blood. Tongo explains Paquita was in the room, and the sorceress says, "Good, we can't touch her because she belongs to Elohim." El Ángel radios Arturo and tells Arturo to follow the sorcerer's Eda. So Arturo brings the girls and Chucho for a stakeout. But Eda radios Cain, who is played by Nathaniel Leon, and orders them to be ready. She drives into an abandoned warehouse and is followed by her heroes. But it's a trap! Our heroes enter the warehouse and begin fighting. It's a schmoz. Everyone is throwing punches. It's over the top. Everyone just comes in and knocks out the last person who threw a punch. Even the girls hit and get hit. Meanwhile, Chema's fighting a little person and losing. It is 8 versus 4, and our crew do a pretty good job holding strong. It reminds me of that meme where that guy tries to impress a girl, showing him his favorite lucha, and the girl goes, "Ese es un revolco entre enanos, mujeres y gays." Anyway, El Ángel finds our crew somehow and tells the bad guys to stop. And Frankenstein ponders, "You dare give us orders?" El Ángel comes in and turns the tide. After the fight, the girls ask El Ángel, "Why do you wear a mask?" And El Ángel explains, he fights for justice, and justice does not have a face. What a cool line. Golden Ruby gets googly eyes for El Ángel, and Chema gets mad. Chema talks about how badly the little person beat him up. Pause. I just want to be clear. In this movie, Arturo's coworker is actually called something else. But I'm going to call him Chema, because I'm not redrawing the person, and it helps with continuity. In fact, Chema, or the side character, actually gets replaced most in the series, notwithstanding the villains, of course. Anyway, at the lair, Cain angrily explains that if they were allowed to use guns, they could eliminate them. But Ida says, no, all members must die by their hands. I'm guessing she means the Panthers, not the henchmen? The sorceress says, you can eliminate the masked man. Tongo will bring in the blood of Holystone. El Ángel appears outside Tongo's apartment and somehow ends up on the roof after walking inside the building. Tongolele just sits in her apartment and smokes. She then calls Ramon to pick her up so they can go to a park, and Ramon goes to pick her up. They are followed by the Panther Cult, but the Panther Cult is being followed by El Ángel. The Panther Cult shoots at El Ángel and chases him to some random house. The men surround the house and shoot at El Ángel, but he hides inside. They set the house on fire. Then the cult shoot at the fire. Meanwhile, Tongo and Ramon go walk in some creepy forest at night. Arturo goes get cigarettes for Tongo he left in the car, and when he comes back, Tongo is missing. But it's another trap! And Ramon is unalived. The next day, Venus lies to her niece by saying her dad went on a long vacation. Kind of what I do to get around the YouTube censors. Venus also tells Paquita her father loved her. Venus leaves the kids so she can play alone. Our heroes and El Ángel are also in the same room, just standing there. Arturo asks, who is doing all this? Bruh. Meanwhile, at Elohim's tomb, the sorceress gives Ramon's blood to him and brings Elohim back to life. At House Holystone, the girls are playing cards, and Arturo says the girls will have 3 agents posted outside. El Ángel drives by and leaves a watch with the agents to call him if they need anything. The girls, meanwhile, get ready for bed. Elohim, later that night, comes in and one-shots the guards and heads inside the house. One agent calls El Ángel for help. The dark priest Elohim goes into Paquita's room, but she has the fire sword, and Elohim leaves out the window. El Ángel comes back and checks on the luchadoras first, then Paquita. At the Panther's Den, the sorceress is upset because they need Paquita for Elohim. So she has a plan. The sorceress is happy because Paquita will be separated from the sword. Newspaper headline: Venus and Ruby versus Las Sombras. In the promoter's locker room, the girls meet Las Sombras. But Las Sombras just stare at Paquita. El Ángel puts two and two together and says Tongo is one of the girls under the mask due to her eyes. He tells the girls be safe. He also tells the girl to leave Paquita in the locker room for safety. So they do. Match number 3 in your main event: Loretta Venus and Golden Ruby versus Las Sombras. The sorceress looks on with cool glasses. Arturo and Chema also look on. Lucha sure is popular, because even at the warehouse, the henchmen look on. Meanwhile, El Ángel goes to the warehouse roof and overhears Kane give some exposition that at 10 p.m., Las Sombras will turn into the Panthers and destroy Las Luchadoras. Some gang members go on the roof, probably for smoke. The last man standing shoot at El Ángel, but El Ángel is fine because of his bulletproof cape. As was said, as it shall be. The girls become Panther women and destroy the ref. El Ángel and Arturo jump into the ring, but they both get clawed. The heroes form a posse with the police and chase after Las Mujeres Panteras. One of the cops gets wrecked by one of the Panther women, and she gets shot. Our heroes continue to look for the other Panther. The sorceress cries and tells everyone her only solace is that Holy Stone will die. Our crew goes back to the lockers, but Paquita's gone. They take the sorceress to the Holy Stone house and threaten her with the fire sword, and she tells them where they took Paquita. She tells them she's at the cemetery, back and to the left, where the crypt is at, the one that belonged to the Sangrioto family. The sorceress says, Elohim, great teacher, forgive me. Only death can save me. So she jumps out a window. El Ángel goes to the window and says, well, nothing to do. Let's go. The last Pantera walks to the cemetery, but she takes forever. And out walks the priest Elohim, while our crew speeds, driving empty roads on their way to save Paquita. Will they be able to stop the priest? Who knows, because as soon as they get to the cemetery, they just walk. No sense of urgency. They find the other Panther woman on the floor. She has left this world due to exhaustion. They enter the crypt, but it's empty, so they decide to leave. Then they hear a noise. They open the crypt and save Paquita. But out comes Elohim. Ruby faints, and El Ángel stabs him with the fire sword. See, this is what I mean about someone else coming in and being a hero. Ruby could have used the sword just as well as El Ángel and saved the day. Anywho, back at the Holy Stone house, they say this is over. And before Venus says thank you, El Ángel disappears. Arturo explains, El Ángel is a hero, a real hero. Those who are few nowadays, those who fight for humanity. El Ángel is back in his lab, and he hangs his mask. Bim. Well, that was something. It was definitely fun and campy. I did not enjoy El Ángel defeating the Dark Priest. If you were going to do that, just call the movie El Ángel. The film was very enjoyable. It had cool sets, cool effects, interesting story, cameos, and tongolele. Overall, a fun film. This has a lot of tropes of a lot of later lucha films. Before the team-ups became a mainstay of this genre, this film really encapsulates what I think of when I say lucha film. It is also the last film in the Las Luchadoras Film Series that is black and white. But no need to fear, lucha fans, our heroes return in color. So was this the best luchadora film in the series? Which one's your favorite? Leave a comment below and let me know, because there are a lot more luchas de tres caídas coming your way. How did a book from the 16th century know that Elohim still had followers? That book's like 400 years old. Wait, if there's only 4 in the bloodline, does that mean Venus's mom is part of the bloodline? Is Venus's mom last name Venus or Holy Stone? Did her mom pass? Is Venus a Holy Stone? Is Venus a millionaire? Or was that only for the movie Las Lobas del Ring? Welcome back, lucha fans. It is I, the man born at a very young age, El Ojo. Today we review the penultimate film in our current series, titled Las Luchadoras vs. El Robot Asesino. Released in 1969, this film was directed by a staple here, Rene Cardona. It is the first film without Loretta Venus or Gloria Ruby, but it is the first film in the series released in color. This film stars Regina Thorne as Gabby and Malu Reyes as Gemma. For my eagle-eyed viewers, Regina Thorne also starred in the 1992 film Like Water for Chocolate, playing Mama Elena, and the 1967 film Rocambole contra las Mujeres Arpias as Amanda Valdez. Don't worry, that film is on the list. Malu Reyes was born in La Tierra de Dinosaurios, or more commonly known as Torreón, Coahuila, Mexico, which makes her Paisa, as El Ojo and his kin are from the state of Coahuila. Plus Ultra. By the way, that is the motto on Coahuila's coat of arms, not a Boku no Hero Academia reference. Is this lucha related? No, but El Ojo loves Coahuila. Moving on, while researching this movie, I came across some damning allegations. Number 1, this is a rehash of the 1962 Las Luchadoras contra el Médico Asesino. We actually reviewed this film in episode 2, if you haven't seen it already. In fact, in the book The Mexican Masked Wrestler and Monster Filmography, the writer Alfredo Salazar is listed on both projects. Allegation number 2 claims that this film is a remake of the episode Return of the Cybernauts from the 1962 British TV series The Avengers, no relation, currently streaming on TV at the time of this recording. The episode Return of the Cybernauts was released in 1968, a whole year before this film was released, and the robot shares a lot of physical similarities. Side note, I did some research and watched the episode, and I found the scientist in Return of the Cybernauts is played by the legendary Peter Cushing. If that name sounds familiar to you, congrats, you're old, or a nerd. For everyone else, that is the Grand Moff Tarkin of Rogue One fame. He also starred in the 1958 Horror of Dracula, the 1957 The Curse of Frankenstein, and, for all my vintage fans, Star Wars. This has nothing to do with lucha. But go out of your way and watch Return of the Cybernauts after this review, and tell me what you think in the comments below. With a 5.0 on IMDb, this is the third highest rated film in the Las Luchadoras Film Series. Does it deserve that title? Let's find out. Credits. Montage of a man, presumably a scientist since he has a lab coat, turns on a robot, while the robot breaks several doors. Title: Las Luchadoras vs. El Robot Asesino. The montage is cool, but it goes on for a solid 3 minutes. Also, I have a suspicion that these are scenes from the film to come, so it kind of gives away the action. Opening shot. A robot walks in a cemetery and throws boxes on the ground, then begins choking an old man. Match number 1. Pause. I'm not against the creative direction of this film, but why show 3 minutes of a robot rampaging in credits, then show an opening scene of a robot rampaging more? Why not have a montage of someone working on the parts of the robot, then an opening shot of a silhouette attacking people? Seems a bit redundant, but what do I know? Back to the match. We get a look of the new unknown tall girl named Gabby in a singles match. And you know she's the protagonist because she wins the match in 58 seconds. After the match, her uncle joins her in the locker room and says, "I thought you were going to lose." A very supportive family. Gabby asks her uncle to leave so she can change and they can go eat. Suddenly, we are transported to a lab. The robot man brings the old man through a sliding door. 2 scientists begin surgery on the old man. It is actually shot pretty well. The scientist yells, "Another failure!" While the tall surgeon monologues, a random nurse covers the body with a blanket. But a growl is heard, so the scientist and his nurse go to the basement. And we are introduced to Carfax. No, not that one. The zombie man, even though he looks more like the man-ape from El Médico Asesino. Go check that out if you haven't already. The scientist explains he wants to control man, but his experiments suffered a metamorphosis and became Carfax. Carfax has fits of rage, but he is the only survivor of the doctor's operations. The doctor's apprentice says, "Well, you built a robot, you should be proud." But the professor scoffs and replies, "No, robots are easy. They are wires. Humans are more difficult, but robots are expensive." The doctor wants to make something similar to the robot, but cost effective. Something in this economy I, the viewer, can relate to. The doctor monologues some more. He wants to turn humanoids into cyborgs to do his bidding, and he will not rest until his goal is achieved. The student recommends taking other scientists so they can help him with his problems. The evil doctor, like Scorpio from the Simpsons episode You Only Move Twice, Season 8, Episode 2, says, "My goodness, what an idea. Why didn't I think of that?" But the professor ponders, whom are the greatest minds? At the ladies' gym, Gabby gets a phone call from her uncle, and he invites her to dinner, but he tells her to cook. At the uncle's lab, Professor Reina invites his lab assistant, Dr. Orlock, the mad scientist from earlier, now sporting glasses, but he declines. This is why nerds stay single, by the way. At the villain's lair, Dr. Orlock's assistant has selected the first scientist on the list. It's Uncle Professor Reina. So, he activates the robot by putting a photo in his chest. The evil professor explains he has the ability to find anyone out of a group of 10 million people. How? This is never explained. This movie was filmed in 1969, and what is considered as the world's first personal computer was not sold until 1971 as the Kenback 1 by John Blackenbaker of the Kenback Corporation. Additionally, these computers don't look like the computers of today. They look like this. Anyway, in the basement, the nurse is fixing her garments in front of the zombie man, while he just stares at her menacingly. So the nurse, like many women, misses the red flags, and Carfax, the zombie man, attacks her. The doctor upstairs realizes it has been a long time since he's seen his nurse. Back at the uncle's lab, Gabby appears for dinner, but the uncle forgot he invited her for dinner. He also can't find his glasses on his head. Meanwhile, at the evil lab, the professor finds the nurse in a red puddle, and the zombie hiding, so the professor starts to whip Carfax. At the uncle's lab, he makes her work, and says it's about time you become productive instead of wrestling. He also says she should get married. She goes into the office and says, "Why don't you get married?" Suddenly, just like the Kool-Aid man, the robot smashes the wall. El Robot Asesino karate chops her uncle. Gabby runs out of the office, but it's a trap. The robot karate chops her and takes her uncle. Gabby wakes up, and we meet two Secret Service agents. Arturo, the strong serious type, and Java, the comic relief. Meanwhile, Professor Reina is in a cell, and Dr. Orlock says he knows more anatomy than any man in the world. Orlock asks his assistant if he knows anyone who's good at engineering. The student tells his master he knows a few, but they need to see which one is the best. Back at the professor's lab, Orlock is in a suit, speaking with the Secret Service. But a secretary walks in and says he has files missing. Gabby asks what was the reason they took her uncle. Professor Orlock says, "I don't know." At the Luchadoras gym, the promoter walks in, and we meet our second luchadora, Gemma Nelson. She was on tour in Central and South America. Back at the Secret Service, the agents tell the inspector they have no clue where the professor is. At the locker room, Gemma asks Gabby, "Why do your eyes look sad?" To which Gabby responds with, "Thanks." Now, if that sounds repetitive, it is because it is almost the exact same lines from Las Luchadoras contra el Médico Asesino. Go watch that if you haven't already. The girls shower together, as was the style at the time. Gabby has a wonderful idea, that her and Gemma should move in together. To which Gemma says, yes. In some parking lot, the robot breaks a fence and chases after some guy. But the robot is too strong and rips off the car door. Match number 2. Gabby wrestles some masked girl. Arturo and Chava look on, and Chava says, "What are we doing here?" "Great question, Chava." And Arturo says he is looking for clues. To which Chava says, "You're just here to look at the girl." And Arturo doesn't banter, he just pulls rank and says, "How dare you disrespect a superior officer? I've worked with coworkers like this. They are a buzzkill." At some random shed in the woods, the robot shows up with a man from earlier. Meanwhile, the girls are in the locker room getting dressed, and Gemma Nelson is introduced to Arturo Campos and Chava Lopez. Chava invites the girls to dinner, but Arturo gets a phone call. They have taken Professor Roca. They all show up at the crime scene, and Chava says, "My cop instinct thinks this will continue." At some random office, the robot breaks into Austin Hill's office and karate chops him. Back at the Secret Service, Inspector Rojas is mad and yells at the agents and the girls. I'm not sure if he's yelling at the girls or they're just in the crossfire. Gemma says if no bodies have been found, it means they want the scientist alive. At Orlok's lair, he meets with the Professor Posse, or PP for short. They actually don't call them that, but I thought I'd give them a name. He explains he wants human robots and says he has failed, but will make them the richest, most powerful men. Also, they're more like human zombies, not human robots, but whatever. One of the men says it's barbaric and satanic and refuses. So the mad scientist says he can leave through an exit. But it's another trap! The robot karate chops Professor Reina. Dr. Hill tries to run, but just sits down, while Dr. Roca says he is poor, so he will help Professor Orlok. Dr. Hill says, I have no other option, so I will help. Meanwhile, a moving car throws out Uncle Professor Reina. Gabby vows revenge, while Dr. Orlok pretends to be sad about Reina's death. Outside Dr. Chavez's office, his secretary is distracted, and a robot walks in with no issue. She eventually notices him and tries to flirt, but the robot says he's not interested, and karate chops her. Arturo and Chava try to get info out of the secretary. Unfortunately, the secretary just wants to be in the newspaper, and talks about how handsome the robot was because of his big shoulders. The gang talks about who could have done this, and Chava says maybe it was a robot, and for some reason everyone freaks out. Back at the evil lair, Dr. Chavez says he will help the human robots. At Gabby's apartment, Orlok stops by and asks if there's any news on her uncle's killer. Then Arturo and Chava walk in. They say they found Otto Rick, a robotic expert. They went to ask him if a robot could be behind the disappearances. And Orlok interjects, I gotta go. Dr. Orlok calls his assistant Waldo and tells him to go to Dr. Reich's and says, you know what to do. Waldo tells Zurdo to prepare the robot, and the robot is on his way to Dr. Rick's. A red car drives in the forest. At Dr. Rick's house, his daughter gave him tea. Outside of the stone house, a green car pulls up with Zurdo and Waldo. The robot goes to the daughter's room first and knocks her out. Then he goes into Dr. Rick's office, but the doctor says get an ambulance, but not for me, and starts blasting. The robot, being a robot, is immune to bullets, so he just karate chops Dr. Rick. Outside the house, our heroes pull up in a red car. They enter the house without a warrant. This is illegal, by the way. For some reason, the stone house is designed with a bedroom, living room, and then office. So when they enter, they see Dr. Rick's daughter in the bedroom. Our heroes all gasp, guessing Rick's daughter won't be returning for the 6th film in the series. Our heroes enter Dr. Rick's office. However, Dr. Rick is in the shadow realm. But it's another trap. The robot was hiding in the corner, and Arturo starts blasting, but the robot easily one-shots everyone. The robot walks out, breaking the door. In a cell, Dr. Chavez gives a list to Waldo so he can complete Dr. Orlok's wishes. That night, Arturo calls Gabby to ask what Dr. Chavez's specialty was. She says explosives. At Dr. Orlok's lab, Dr. Chavez does a show and tell, a machine that explodes. This allows Dr. Chavez to escape by walking out the front door. Orlok, of course, sends the robot after Dr. Chavez. Dr. Chavez, for some reason, goes to Gabby's apartment, and not the authorities. He is out of breath. Remember guys, exercise is important. Dr. Chavez asks for water, but when Gabby goes to get a glass, the robot stops by to karate chop her and take Dr. Chavez. Roca tells him he is happy to work with Dr. Orlok. Orlok eavesdrops and is happy to hear what Roca says. Roca even exclaims that he found a way to make humans obedient. At Gabby's house, she says she is hurt, while at Dr. Orlok's lair, the scientists do another show and tell. Match number 3. Gemma versus a different masked luchadora. Gemma wins. We return to Dr. Orlok's evil lab, and they explain that the Aracelium bracelet will make humans controllable. Human robots, if you will. Kind of seems like they will be human puppets, not human robots, but okay. Also, I'm not sure how a bracelet controls the mind, but I guess that's why I'm not an evil scientist. Dr. Orlok says he wants to see them in action, so he uses it on Dr. Chavez, probably for making that explosion. And they make him do things like walk, and raise a hand, and another hand. It actually worked. He then shuts down Dr. Chavez for some reason, and Dr. Orlok laughs. The next morning, our heroes are talking about who it could be. Arturo says he has no idea. The only other person who knew Arturo and Chava were going to see Dr. Rick was Professor Orlock. Flashback. For some reason they played the full scene from earlier, but with the sepia tone. I'm not doing that. We return to the evil lair where Dr. Orlock tears up his plans and gets an alert. Our heroes are outside. Zurdo lets him in, and Arturo says they went to ask him some question. But it's another trap! Zurdo pulls out a gun, and the robot enters with Waldo and Dr. Roca and Dr. Hill. Waldo puts an acrylium bracelet on Gemma, and she is under Orlock's control. Roca tries to put a bracelet on Gabby, but she puts it on the robot. Zurdo starts blasting and hits Roca, and he explodes on a computer. Waldo and Zurdo try to calm the robot, but the robot tussles with them. Armando punches Orlock, and Chava starts sucker punching Zurdo. Gabby just takes the acrylium bracelet off, kinda seems like a flaw in the design, and Arturo beats Dr. Orlock, and Gabby steps on the remote. The robot explodes, and the lab catches on fire. Orlock goes to the basements and tells Carfax to escape. They have to leave. So he just breaks out. Was he able to do this at any time? A radio gives exposition. Dr. Orlock's lab was destroyed by the fire. Dr. Orlock tells him to bring a luchadora so he can take revenge for destroying the robot. So he goes into some random bedroom as sexy jazz music plays. How did Carfax know she was a wrestler? How did she know where she lives? Was she in the movie at any time prior? Doesn't matter, because the next day, the promoter comes in and asks the girls if they've seen Berta Reyes. They say no, and so do all the people who've been watching this movie. Back at Dr. Orlock's evil lab, he will put the brain of Carfax in the luchadora, so the body can be as strong, and he will use the acrylium bracelet to control her. Zurdo will be there to watch. They make Elektra and cover her in steel plating, but it looks like a gray sweater. She hits a table and it makes a dent. Honestly, not that impressive. Exposition radio. Match number 4, 5, and 6. Elektra has a Goldberg gimmick. She has an undefeated streak, and somehow after 3 matches, she is 6-0. And is the #1 contender for a championship match. Poster. Sin límite de tiempo. La espectacular Gaby Reina versus La poderosa Elektra. Match number 8. Gabby, with her crown looking like a blue Glinda from The Wizard of Oz, with a crown and scepter, walks in. Before the match starts, Gabby somehow recognizes who Bertha is, even though she is wearing a mask. Gemma recognizes Zurdo in the crowd and beats him up. He squeals and says Orlock is in the arena and controlling Elektra the robot, so she hands him over to the police. She jumps into the ring to help Gabby, but the ref does not call a DQ. Gabby tells Arturo that Orlock is in the arena, so Orlock flees. Armando and Chava are in hot pursuit. Orlock and Elektra escape through the back door, but there are so many cops they go back into the arena, and the inspector comes with reinforcements. Orlock and Elektra escape through the light truss in the arena, but they are cornered. Arturo goes after them. Nobody goes with him despite having 20 cops there. To no one's surprise, the robot beats up Arturo with ease. Chava, much like Chema from Las Luchadoras contra el Médico Asesino, is also a great shot, and one-shots Elektra, then destroys Orlock's control, shooting him in the stomach. Elektra the robot was left in walking motion, and falls over the truss and into the ring. Orlock has a constipated look on his face before falling into the ring. The inspector says, "Call an ambulance," and our heroes walk away. Finn. So what do you guys think? Was this a remake, an homage, or a cheap imitation? Let's start with the bad. This film still has issues with lighting, especially on location or outside. Designs for the villains and characters are kinda weak. Pacing issues, random character inserts, and of course my biggest gripe is that even though the titled heroes are Las Luchadoras, Arturo is the one pushing the action, leaving the girls to take a passive role throughout most of the film. But this film has some better sets, lighting, and costumes. Would I rewatch this? Most likely not. Would I recommend it? Definitely not. It's very similar to Las Luchadoras contra el Médico Asesino, and I appreciate the attempt at camp. It gave it a charming quality. This film is not bad, it's just not memorable. Anywho, I am thinking of doing a tier list video for the movies I have reviewed for Or Year of the Lord 2025, but tell me, what do you prefer? A tier list, an awards show, or something completely different? It will only be for the movies reviewed in 2025. You can leave your suggestions in the comments below. And stick around, Lucha fans, because there are a lot more luchas de tres caídas coming your way. Why not unleash the zombie on the luchadoras? How did Orlok come up with the money for the first robot asesino, but not a second?
Roar.
Egad, Carfax!
Roar.
What are you doing with that bracelet?
Roar.
Obey. 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 Buenos dias, amigos. It is I, the man who completed the Kessel run in less than 11 parsecs. El Ojo. Welcome back as we bring to you the last and final film in the Las Luchadoras Film Series. In La Horripilante Bestia Humana. Although considered a part of the Las Luchadoras Film Series, this film only includes one luchadora, Lucy Osorio. Directed by Rene Cardona and written by both Rene Cardona Sr. and Rene Cardona Jr., who you may actually remember starred in the 1954 film El Enmascarado de Plata, playing the character Pecas. This film stars Norma Lazarno in the role of Lucy Osorio. She also starred in the 1968 film Hasta el Viento Tiene Miedo and the 2009 film El Estudiante. She also starred in 9 episodes of La Rosa de Guadalupe and 4 episodes of Como Dice el Dicho. This film was released in 1969 and rated R. This film includes horror, nudity, and the return of the beloved actor Armando Silvestre, the original Arturo. Unfortunately, this is the last film in the Las Luchadoras film series. With a 4.9 on IMDb, does this film deserve the middle-of-the-road rating? Or did being rated R hamper the film? Let's find out. Title card: La Horripilante Bestia Humana. Yellow horror letters with a red background, as a campy blood hand fills the screen with a black background. In the opening scene, Lucy Osorio puts on a red lucha mask, which kind of looks like the exact mask from the 1968 film La Mujer, Murcielago. Except this mask is red instead of a blue-purple. Arturo walks in, and apparently they are a couple. He helps her put on her lucha mask. Match number 1. Lucy Osorio versus some green girl. It is nice seeing luchadoras with masks upholding the ancient tradition of lucha. You know, 6 movies into the series. Anywho, during the match, Lucy throws her opponent so hard out of the ring, she lands on the floor and bunks her head. She is injured and cannot move. At Hospital Central, a receptionist is taking calls and sends an ambulance to the arena. Dr. Krallman walks by and she tells him, "You have a meeting tomorrow." He responds by saying, "Okay." He leaves the hospital and enters a teal car. Wait, is this the same teal car from the last movie? It doesn't matter. We then see a sign, Zoológico de Chapultepec. Still open today, by the way. You can actually check it out if you're ever in Ciudad de Mexico. Dr. Krallman and his driver Goyo break into the Chapultepec Zoo. We see an orangutan, the smartest of all primates. In fact, local folklore from Borneo says that orangutans could talk but choose not to, as a sign of their high intelligence, because they're afraid if they did, they'd be enslaved and put to work. Which, looking at humanity's history, would definitely happen. Dr. Krallman shoots a man in a gorilla suit with a tranquilizer and knocks him out. Once asleep, Dr. Krallman shows his intelligence by sending Goyo into the gorilla cage. Back at Hospital Central, Arturo Martinez and Lucy Osorio ask a random doctor how her opponent from earlier is doing. The random doctor says she has a fractured skull and needs emergency surgery. He also explains they need the specialist, Dr. Krallman. Meanwhile, Dr. Krallman goes to visit his son, Julio, a man who looks like Elijah Woods, but is not. Unless Mr. Woods is a time traveler or a vampire. We, the audience, find out that Julio is sick. Dr. Krallman tells Julio he has to go, but he will be back. Outside the surgery room, Lucy stops Dr. Krallman and asks if her opponent will be okay. He responds with, "We will now need to wait." In some random hospital office, a group of 3 doctors tell Krallman that Julio's leukemia is strong and his son's days are numbered. Back at Dr. Krallman's mansion, he gives some genuinely awesome bedside manner
to Julio and tells him you will be healed. The diagnosis is great, which is what you should do when someone is sick or injured. Dr. Krallman is sad, but his son Julio smiles. Dr. Krallman goes to his evil lab and tells Goyo, "We will do the surgery." For some reason, we go back to the same lab. Goyo shoots the gorilla with a tranq, and the gorilla falls. The professor gives us exposition. He says maybe the blood of a powerful animal like a gorilla can eliminate the cancer in Julio's blood. Krallman will also do a heart transplant, so Julio's body can handle the new blood. By the way, this has no merit in science. You would probably have better luck using the blood of a bat or a naked mole rat. The point is, children, if you are sick, do not do blood transfusions with any animals. Cut to the operation. The doctor cuts open a pig, and it is really campy. I love it. I cannot do it enough justice. You can actually find the movie online at the time of recording. It is actually on Tubi. Go to the 15:49-minute mark and see the operation. It's shot really well with a good score, close-ups, and a quirky machine. He lives. His son survived the experiment. Match number 2. Lucy Osorio versus some wrestler that is wearing black and white. Our hero lost? What? Honestly, it is about time. I think they should do this more frequently in lucha movies, where the match ends in a no contest or a DQ, and wins their final match by using something they learned fighting the monster. But hey, what do I know? Back at Krallman's evil lab, the son, in a plastic box, is relaxing. Krallman tells his son to relax, and orders Goyo to move the gorilla to the incinerator. I know doctors are rich, but how big is a doctor's house? Meanwhile, at the Chapultepec Zoo, a man walks by with melons, and doesn't see a gorilla, and runs away. It only took a few days to notice a gorilla was missing. Sign, Jefe Guardias de Zoológico. The chief of security, played by Nathaniel Frankenstein Leon, is mad. They can't find the gorilla. Back at the locker room, Lucy is getting dressed, and Arturo walks in. Funny enough, she has the door locked, and she actually has to let him in, which is the smartest thing any of the luchadoras have done. They kiss, and she asks him to invite her to dinner. Arturo agrees, but only if she wins. They laugh. Match number 3. Norma Laser wins after applying La Estrella Fantasma, a variation of the Fabi Apache pin. After the match, a coworker tells Arturo that an ape escaped from the zoo, and the chain was broken, and the inspector wants to see him tonight. This news is so important, Arturo interrupts Lucy while she showers. She tells Arturo, "You love your boss more than me," and closes the door. Good thing she's not mad. Back at the lab, Goyo brings everybody food, but everyone is asleep. He cleans the office, but it's a trap! Julio turns into the Ape-Man with a scar, and escapes through a window. Krallman and Goyo get rifles and chase after the Ape-Man. In an alley, the Ape-Man walks and sees a woman shower in her apartment building. The Ape-Man scales the building and goes inside. And we get gratuitous nudity. We also get, in my opinion, the worst part of the movie, where the Ape-Man essays the woman, then unalives her. The victim yells so loud the neighbors actually call the foreman of the building to open the door. And it's actually shot really well. You can actually see the blood on not only the victim, but the furniture. Once they open the door to the apartment, the foreman looks on in horror. You know what? I'm calling it. Go and watch this movie. It's actually on Tubi at the time of recording, and it's also in English. It's also on Amazon, but I don't have Amazon money. Darn you, Jeff Bezos. Krallman and Goyo find the Band-Ape scaling the girl's apartment, and they drive to the other side of the building to cut him off. But the Beastman escapes. A boy is walking down an alley in the middle of the night, and I thought the Beastman was going to attack him, but the Ape-Man walks away, and his dad hits him with a tranquilizer. Back at the apartment, the body of the victim is taken out of the apartment, and Arturo asks what happens, but the crowd just talks over each other. Back at the Krallman house, he has a pity party, and could not believe this could happen. The doctor says he will turn into an Ape-Man and back into a human, and back and forth. He says the only solution is to do a heart transfusion with a living human. That way, he can stop the transformation. The doctor comes up with a cruel idea. The doctor says he will use the girl from earlier, and use her heart because she will die anyway.
and even if she lives, she won't walk. Wow, I guess he is pretty evil. Goyo agrees to take Lucy's opponent from the hospital, and Kralman tells Goyo to fix the window and inject the beast every 8 hours with a trank. Lucy goes to visit her opponent at Hospital Central, but the nurse says she can't accept any visitors at this time. Back at the Kralman lab, the man-ape wakes up and in a fit of rage, walks out through the fixed window. Meanwhile, Kralman and Goyo prepare to take Lucy's opponent from the hospital. At the city park, the Ape-Man walks in and attacks a couple that's making out at a park bench. Good. PDA is gross. Go make out at home. He eliminates the man by hitting him with cheap Halloween blood, and then attacks another woman. It's a very unsettling scene as the girl screams in horror. At the doctor's garage, Kralman and Goyo return with Lucy's opponent. Back at the park, the victim wakes up and runs into a shop with 2 men and screams for help. One of the 2 men calls the cops. The less smart man runs into the woods with a knife, but it's a trap. The not smart man has a knife used against him by the Ape-Man. Kralman notices the Ape-Man is not in the lab. Meanwhile, the Ape-Man attacks some random man in an alley. A crowd is gathering at the park, and Kralman arrives and looks on in fear. Meanwhile, in the alley, an old lady stumbles across the body of the random man and yells. Kralman and Goyo find the Ape-Man and shoot him with a trank. Just in time because the cops and the ambulance arrive. Arturo arrives at the park and wants to know what is going on. He goes to the shop and speaks with a woman. Meanwhile, on the TV, we hear news that a gorilla escaped from the zoo. We get some more gratuitous nudity. Remember, do not watch this with children because this movie is rated R. We are back in the surgery room, and again, it looks very real. I don't think it's a person, I think it may be a pig, but the effect looks really awesome, and the way the blood splatters and the way it's shot with the sound, audio, and lights, you can tell what's going on. Go watch this film. After, the doctor tells Goyo to burn the cadaver. Back at the hospital, a nurse goes to give Lucy's opponent some food, but her room is empty? She tells the doctor and they go tell Kralman about the missing woman. The hospital calls Kralman and tell her that Lucy's opponent is missing, while Kralman asks Goyo if all her ashes are gone, and orders him to burn wood to hide her ashes, but wait until the phone call is finished. Kralman pretends to be upset. He starts to yell at his staff. She couldn't have left, unless she is kidnapped. The board members of the hospital try to come up with a solution. Their solution is she sleepwalked herself out of the hospital. Kralman says he agrees, but if they can't find the body soon, the hospital will have to contact the authorities. At the Secret Service, they gather clues. The fingerprints of the attacks seem to be 2 different people. They seem to be located in one general area. A gorilla disappeared from the zoo, and a witness describes a beast man. Arturo says a gorilla was stolen from the zoo and is now a half beast, half human. But the inspector, like most bosses, brushes it off and says, "That sounds more like a late night movie." Wink. Goyo comes in and asks if Kralman has read the paper. Apparently, the authorities think a half beast, half human is terrorizing the city. The professor prays and says he only needs 6 more hours. He waits by the Ape-Man and he slowly transforms back into Julio. Kralman tells Goyo they need to move him slowly, so they don't start a transformation. They put Julio back in bed. In Arturo's squad car, he calls the Secret Service and asks to be connected to Lucy. Hold up. In this scene, Arturo's driver looks exactly like Ruben Aguirre. You may actually remember that name, Ruben Aguirre, or Professor Girafales of El Chavo del Ocho fame. I actually went on IMDb, but I couldn't find anything. So if anybody can confirm or disprove this theory, please leave a comment below. The operator connects Arturo with Lucy, but she's in the shower, so she just lays naked. There is a lot of nudity. Anywho, Lucy and Arturo agree to meet later that night. Dr. Kralman leaves his house to go to Hospital Central. Meanwhile, red lights flash over Julio, symbolizing danger and the transformation into the beast. Kralman arrives to Hospital Central, but when Goyo goes to check on Julio, he sees an empty bed and goes back downstairs. But it's another trap! The Ape-Man is back, and he attacks Goyo. Kralman returns home and calls for Julio, but there is no response. To be fair, I feel like most teenagers are like this. Kralman goes to his son's room and tries to reason with the Ape-Man, but he falls and hits his head on furniture. In this scene, you can actually see the actor didn't want to have Halloween blood because they only put a few drops on his forehead. Julio puts Kralman in his bed so he can heal from the scratch, and he leaves through the window. Does being a beast man mean you can't use doors? A nearby cop hears a commotion and is attacked by the Ape-Man, and the Ape-Man is nice enough to send the officer to sleep. Lucy arrives mid-attack, and for some reason gets out of the safety of her car and runs into the park nearby. The Ape-Man catches up to Lucy, but her clothes stays intact. Arturo sees the Ape-Man and points a gun at him, but Kralman stops him from shooting. Luckily, they are able to find Julio passed out instead of the Ape-Man. The rest of the police arrive at Kralman's house and find the secret lab. This lab has 4 known levels: a lab, a cellar, a ground floor, and a first floor. Arturo finds the incinerator and he asks a detective to have it analyzed. At the hospital, the Ape-Man adds a male nurse to his list of victims. He follows a female nurse and finds a little girl. Somehow, the Ape-Man and the little girl end up on the roof of Hospital Central, as Kralman hears the police saying, "Eliminate the monster." Arturo goes to the roof and makes his presence known, but instead of shooting the Ape-Man, he lets Kralman come out and plead to the beast. The professor asks to surrender the child. Meanwhile, on the ground floor, the cops below shoot at the Ape-Man. Julio goes to the Shadow Realm, and the doctor cries and asks for forgiveness. Afterwards, in Arturo's car, Lucy asks, "How did you figure out what happened?" Arturo says the professor went crazy, but he snapped out of it just to confess. And I love the closing line. This is sad, really sad, as the car drives away to a heroic song. Finn. This is a bloody good film. Las Luchadoras, or Luchadora, didn't really have any impact on the conclusion of the film. She was often treated as a damsel in distress. Honestly, this film is more of a story of a father trying to save his son than it is a woman fighting for justice. I will repeat, this film is actually on Tubi. At the time of this recording, I will leave a link in the description below. Seriously, go out of your way and watch this film. It is gory, and the monster actually feels like a threat to society. Anywho, stay tuned for next month, as we have a special bonus episode to conclude our female luchadoras of yesteryear, because there are a lot more luchas de tres caídas coming your way. Wait, what happened to Venus? Does Arturo only date luchadoras? How did the zoo not notice a gorilla missing? Why did its zoos have a security force? Buenos dias, amigos. It is I, the man who stood up to Chuck Norris and ran away. El Ojo. Welcome back, as today we have a bonus special episode, and we review La Mujer Murcielago, directed by a cornerstone here, René Cardona. This film is currently on Pluto TV at the time of this recording, so go check it out if you haven't already. Some of you lucha fans may be wondering, hey, isn't La Mujer Murcielago, or Batwoman, a DC property? Well, legally, you are right, lucha fans. The first Batwoman, Kathy Kane, actually first appeared in Detective Comics issue 233 in July 1956, a full 12 years before this film was released. But the DC was not using her at this time. The second and more modern version of the character, Kate Kane, first appeared in 52, issue number 11, in 2006. La Mujer Murcielago could also be a ripoff of the Batgirl. The first person who took on that mantle of the Batgirl was Elizabeth Kane, who first made her appearance in Batman issue 139 in April 1961. However, the most famous and definitive version of the Batgirl is the incomparable Barbara Gordon, who made her first appearance in Detective Comics issue 359, titled The $1 Million Debut of Batgirl. published in January 1967, which predates this movie by a full year. In fact, Barbara Gordon's Batgirl became such a hit, she made her first appearance on the 1966 Adam West Batman series, where she played the actress Yvonne Craig in Season 3, the episode Enter Batgirl, Exit the Penguin, which first aired on September 14th, 1967. However, I would argue La Mujer Murcielago is no sidekick, as her costume more resembles the Adam West Batman, but instead of blue-gray, we have purple and gray. So, would it be fair to compare her as a female Batman, and not a reimagining of other female Bat characters? Well, this film actually released in 1968, a full 2 years after the Adam West Batman movies. So why didn't DC at the time put a kibosh on this blatant copycat of the Caped Crusader? If the internet is to be believed, it is because it was not a financial success and is a lesser known property with little cultural impact and a limited cult following, i.e. La Mujer Murcielago was not deemed an important enough property. I mean, just look at DC how they treated the unreleased 2022 Batman film. Despite being in post-production, it was shelved as a tax write-off. However, this film does list Bob Kane and Bill Finger with writing credits. So, is this film an original creation that reinvents the Bat Person? Or will it be a second-rate knockoff? With a 4.8 on IMDb, let's find out. Title card: A surf-tastic theme plays. 2 images of painted waves. Opening shot: waves crash against the beach, while a man and a boy are fishing. But a man sees a body face down drift onto the shore. The man and the boy carry the body onto the beach and turn him over. And we cut to a radio saying, "Another athlete's body found on the beach." Meanwhile, at the Secret Service, 2 agents are mad at the yellow journalism from the radio. But similar events happened in Macau, Hong Kong, and are now happening in Acapulco. Another man, Roberto, walks in and says La Mujer Murcielago is willing to help. We meet La Mujer Murcielago, a woman from La Capital, whose wealth inspired her to fight for justice, and she mastered all sports, like shooting guns, riding horses, spearfishing, which is actually shot pretty well, and of course, the sport of lucha libre. Some of you may be asking, hey, isn't she wearing the same mask as Lucy from La Horripilante Bestia Humana, but instead of a red suit, it's purple? Well, that's a great question. Anyways, the average-looking guy says, wow, I can't wait to meet her. The chief reminds everyone you can only see her with a mask, because if she is seen without it, she will be eliminated by her enemies. The Secret Service plans to convince the lucha promoter to host matches in Acapulco to attract the killer. And the chief asks, when will she arrive? Mario Robles says, mañana, or tomorrow in English. Cut to a plane and a woman parachuting to the beach. Our hero, La Mujer Murcielago, gets in a car and drives down the boulevard and goes to the police station, where reporters stand by and remark, this must be a hard case since they called in La Mujer Murcielago. La Mujer Murcielago and the Secret Service go to the medical examiner and ask what happened. The medical examiner explains the victim is missing her pineal gland. They deduce that this must be some kind of medicine man. The medical examiner says he did a great job. You can barely see the incision. The chief asked, what is his goal? To which the medical examiner says, we will have to wait until he makes a mistake. La Mujer Murcielago interjects, or he commits another crime, while ominous music plays in the background. And holy foreshadowing, Batwoman, we are on the boat Reptilicus, as scary music plays. It honestly just looks like a tour boat, painted green, but whatever. Then we enter an evil lab. We meet Dr. Williams and his assistant, Igor. Very creative. And jumpin' Jehoshaphat, Dr. Williams is played by Robert Canedo. Yes, Robert Canedo, who played El Médico Asesino, not the luchador, but the villain in the film Las Luchadoras contra el Médico Asesino, which we reviewed in episode 2. Go check that out if you haven't already. They are running some experiments in a fish tank, but Dr. Williams says, no reaction. We need another luchador for an experiment. Igor asks, why luchadors? Dr. William rants and explains, luchadors are the only athletes with supreme physical strength and the perfect specimens, just like he'd always dreamed of.
I feel like there's an app to find men like that. Anywho, Dr. Williams tells Igor to find strong men. At the Lucha gym, a blind man walks in. We will call him Shades because it's never specified that he is blind and he walks around with shades and a walking stick. He convinces some of the luchadors to order fish. Meanwhile, La Mujer Murcielago is working out and everyone stops to stare at her. La Mujer Murcielago almost breaks someone's arm because she is so strong, so she decides she's trained enough. She goes to the locker room and calls Mario Lopez, but he is on the lookout at the beach. La Mujer Murcielago goes to a secret base where Norm, the agent from earlier, is on the radio, and they overhear a conversation. Shades calls Dr. Williams and tells him he has another order for the afternoon. Apparently, the secret base is under the gym because La Mujer Murcielago runs out of the hallway, but Shades has already disappeared. Meanwhile, on a small boat named Lily, one of the luchadors is fishing when he is suddenly attacked by 4 scuba divers. Dr. Williams and Igor look on from Reptilicus. They put the luchador on a bigger boat called Lucy. The henchmen bring the luchador on the boat. Igor tells William that number 1 will bring the luchador, and Williams tells him hurry. Wait, is Igor not number 1? That's kinda mean. But people often accept the love they think they deserve. Anywho, Shades and the 4 scuba divers bring in victim number 2 and tie him up. Dr. Williams asks number 1 if he had any trouble. But he says no, but La Mujer Murcielago is now in Acapulco and she may be a problem. Dr. Williams responds with, no worries, we will leave after this operation. Igor puts the oxygen mask on the camera and we get a shot of the luchador hooked up with wires to a goldfish. And Dr. Williams tells Igor to hurry up. Igor presses buttons and the professor monologues his plans to create an amphibious man. Kinda feels like this is not the best plan since they absorb through their skin. For some reason, now the fish is a frog. You can tell Igor doesn't really care what's going on because he asks, what do we do with the body? Dr. Williams, being an environmentalist, says, throw him on some rocks. At the Club de Bates, an ocean club, Mario Robles tells La Mujer Murcielago that this is where the luchador went missing. They decide to get drinks. La Mujer Murcielago asks if they were able to trace the call from the gym, and Mario Robles says we were able to trace it to Dr. Williams, a scientist who lives off his yacht, the Reptilicus. Cough. To our boat. Cough. He is a surgeon who collects fish and has no friends. Poor Igor. I'm guessing he's not a friend? La Mujer Murcielago says we are on the right track, while Mario Robles says he will call the capital and contact Agent Tony Roca to find more information. Isn't that what La Mujer Murcielago is here for? La Mujer Murcielago drives a boat to El Reptilicus, but one of the henchmen says no visitors. She tries to go in by saying, come on, but the security says leave. This actually made me laugh, but I don't think it was intentional. Then we see La Mujer Murcielago overlooking the bay with binoculars. In walks in Mario Robles with a familiar face. It's Tony Roca, played by a favorite here, Armando Silvestre. He has all the info for Dr. Williams and the disappearances around the world, and finds out that Dr. Williams is a neuroscientist. La Mujer Murcielago says she could not get on the boat, but Tony says the law must be just. Suddenly, they get a phone call. It's the inspector, and he has big news. The yacht, which is actually a party boat, and not a yacht, is set to sail tomorrow. They do not explain why, but I found out boats actually need to charter their trips to ensure compliance with customs. Back at the yacht Reptilicus, we get something brewing under the sea. La Mujer Murcielago. She uses a scuba scooter to get near the boat. I honestly had no idea these things existed, and it looks cool. However, they miss an opportunity as they could have painted it purple. She gets on the boat without being seen, and it's a good thing she has her face covered. This yacht is not beating the party boat allegation, as the first floor of the boat is just a bar. She explores the boat, but no one is on deck, so she decides to explore the cabins. Look at me going nautical. She finds an office and a conveniently placed thesis titled The Pineal Gland. So La Mujer Murcielago takes it and keeps exploring. She spies on Dr. Williams and Igor for a bit, but she gets attacked by Shades and a blue sidekick. Being a competent hero, La Mujer Murcielago
escapes by punching her way out, but Dr. Williams tries to stop her. La Mujer Murcielago, being a champion of justice, throws some conveniently placed acid in Dr. Williams' face and runs away, while Igor tends to Dr. Williams. I guess horse riding and archery really helps in the fight against evil, because she takes on 7 men with guns with relative ease. She goes back below deck and throws smoke grenades at 2 of the henchmen. Shades even yells, "Get her! She doesn't have a gun!" after all the men have already been knocked out. And with that, she's finally able to jump back into the ocean and escape via scuba scooter. Dr. Williams, now looking like Two-Face, is mad and wants revenge. I guess he will be staying in Acapulco a bit longer. Back at the gym, La Mujer Murcielago is training. She goes to shower and for some reason, Shades is at the gym selling gum. Outside the gym, we see a black Thunderbird. La Mujer Murcielago asks her training partner Esmeralda if she wants a ride. Esmeralda, being ungrateful, says no, they're coming for me. As La Mujer Murcielago drives away, the gang flashes a gun at her. But Shades tells them they do not kill in broad daylight, they have a code of ethics. The bad guys get into 2 separate cars and follow along. A bunch of girls walk out of the beach houses, and Shades says, no matter what, we will wait. Surf beach party number 1, we get cool music and terrible dancing. While La Mujer Murcielago sits between Tony and Mario. She tells the guys she swears she saw a Fishemen. She kisses both men and Tony leaves to work. Chema, or the average looking guy, comes to tell Mario he is needed. The guy's not called Chema, but I don't know what else to call him, since they don't actually give him a name. La Mujer Murcielago gets dressed and drives off, but the gang is in hot pursuit. They even wear funny little masks that just cover the eyes. She tries to escape, and the chase is cool. You get a view of Acapulco. Shout out to my buddy Penseno, he's from there. I do like that they swerve to avoid hitting a dog. For some reason, La Mujer Murcielago stops on the side of the road, and Nathaniel Frankenstein Leon jumps out with a gun. He jumps into Mujer Murcielago's car and they drive away. All 3 cars pull up to a cliff, and Mujer Murcielago, like any woman who is kidnapped, begins doing her makeup. But it's a trap! La Mujer Murcielago's makeup is actually a gun, and even shoots one of the men. Being extremely outclassed, the 6 men listen to her, until one of them kicks the gun out of her hand while she radios Tony and Mario for backup. The men, realizing they outnumber her, drag her to the edge of the cliff. But she escapes and beats them up. This scene would have been way better with music. Police sirens are heard in the background and the gang runs away. Back at the coroner's office, there's another victim who is missing a pineal gland. La Mujer Murcielago says, I just hope the next victims are not you or I. Is this foreshadowing? Let's find out. On the Reptilicus, Williams is mad the gang failed. He tells Igor to begin the experiments to radiate the creature by blasting it with bubbles, then grabs a container with no gloves. Wait, if it's radiated, why touch it? The creature is cute. It kind of reminds me of Power Rangers Season 1. Not the 1975 series Super Sentai. I'm sure no one was confused. But I do want to point out that this movie has a tiny monster which is activated to fight the main hero. And although there's no kaiju battle that destroys the city, it is nice to see Lucha Libre being a trendsetter with effects, especially since it often feels like they're playing catch up. Anywho, the gang scuba dives with a tiny pocket-sized monster, or pocket monster, if you will, into the ocean. And there's a strange box pointing at the monster. Once the scuba divers swim a few feet away, Igor blasts the pocket monster with radiation, and it grows. Is it safe to be underwater with radiation? I mean, none of the scuba divers are wearing any protection at all. That doesn't matter. The gang uses a net to capture the orange creature from the Blue Lagoon, but he declines the offer by drowning the gang. Dr. Williams tells Igor to stop and place him under control. A loud pitch is heard, and the orange creature goes to bed. Once on the boat, Williams orders his gang to put the creature in room 102, and orders him strapped. After he monologues his big scheme to Igor, he says he wants a fish woman, and he is a perfect candidate. But Shades looks on in disgust. 2 of the henchmen go into the lab and begin poking at the beast. Being the creature is strong, he easily escapes the leather straps. Igor hears a commotion and begins blasting the creatures with a remote. Then Dr. Williams rushes in and saves the creature. Meanwhile, in the ocean, Mario and the attractive woman scope out the boat Reptilicus. Luckily, Igor is by the window and sees the boat. William deduces that this must be La Mujer Murcielago. Not sure how he would know this since it's the ocean and it could literally be anyone. Williams has an amazing plan to release the creature, who is now called Pisces, into the ocean to attack her. Kind of feels like this should have happened earlier. The creature chases after La Mujer Murcielago in a very anticlimactic chase that feels like it could have been sped up and had more interesting music. They swim through a random fish tank, a school of fish, and La Mujer Murcielago uses a flare gun underwater. Apparently, Pisces, formerly known as the orange creature from the Blue Lagoon, is afraid of fire. To be fair, I would be afraid too if I was a fish and there was fire underwater burning me. La Mujer Murcielago yells at Mario, "The creature's chasing me," and Mario asks, "What monster?" as Pisces shakes the boat. Mario, keeping in the theme of the movie, throws gasoline and lights it on fire. This film did not care about ocean life at all. They do have a cool shot of the creature looking at the flames from under the water. It looks awesome. At the bar, they think of a way to arrest Dr. Williams, but describing Dr. Williams' plan to use luchadors turned fishmen sounds insane. So Mario thinks it is best to keep secretly investigating for his warrant. Back on the boat, Williams has another plan. He will send number 1 to place a tracking chip on La Mujer Murcielago. Once they have their second creature, they will go to another country. For more donors, he will create hundreds of soldiers to take over the world. Yes, hundreds. To take over a population of 3.6 million. Match number 1. A tag team match with La Mujer Murcielago and a girl in red. Versus 2 random opponents. Number 1, or Shades, looks on. La Mujer Murcielago and her partner win with a double upside down tarantula. I couldn't find the name of this move, but if you know what it's called, leave a comment below. Outside the arena, Shades places a tracking chip on La Mujer Murcielago while fans surround her. Back at La Mujer Murcielago's apartment, they serve drinks. Again. Mario says, "I will spend the night." And La Mujer Murcielago says, "Okay." Later that night, La Mujer Murcielago finds a tracker and scans it. Knowing it is something sinister, she places it on her nightgown. Later that night, Pisces, the orange creature from the Blue Lagoon, emerges. I guess he doesn't have land legs because he walks awkwardly. Or it could be the fact that he walked on a bunch of cobblestones. Thank the Lord, Mario is there, asleep on the couch while the creature clomps all over the living room. La Mujer Murcielago screams, and that finally wakes up Mario, but he faints after being shaken by the creature. Thankfully, he wakes up and remembers he has a gun, and begins shooting at the creature. Could have done that earlier, but what do I know? I'm not a super spy. Mario catches up to them on the beach and starts wrestling, but Williams calls for Pisces to return. Dr. Williams is confused as to why Pisces hasn't returned with the girl. I'm still confused how Pisces tracked her. Was it radar? This movie never explains, so it's kind of pointless pondering. In a sensible move, Dr. Williams realizes La Mujer Murcielago works with Agent Mario Robles and thinks it is best to capture Mario to have La Mujer come to them. Which is the first thing in this movie that makes sense. The next day, the Chief and Mario see a guy on a motorcycle laying on the side of the road. But it's a trap! The gang captures Mario and the Chief. Remember kids, do not help people. It could be a trap. For legal reasons, this is a joke. At the locker room, La Mujer Murcielago is pacing and opens a locker. It's a note. We got him. La Mujer Murcielago gets a cool close-up shot of her in shock. She drives back to the bar from earlier. Meanwhile, on the boat, Dr. Williams monologues his plan to use La Mujer Murcielago. What a terrible host. He just goes on talking about his life, his plan, his enemies, and for some reason, La Mujer Murcielago gets captured by one man. Feel like this could have been done at any other time in the movie. You have an orange creature, you have a gang of 6, but sneaking up behind her is a weakness. The gang carries La Mujer to the lab and places the tracker on Dr. Williams. Even before he does surgery, he keeps talking for like a whole minute about revenge, and he says, "Igor, take off her mask." I guess that was a signal because here comes Pisces. He smashes the door. Smacks number 1. The creature destroys the lab and attacks William, while Mario and the Chief escape. Were they able to do that the whole time? The lab catches on fire, and they use real smoke, because the set is black. You can't see anything. The trio escaped on a tiny boat from earlier. As they drive away, a tiny replica explodes in water. Back at the bar, Tony doesn't understand why the creature attacked. La Mujer Murcielago walks in the apartment and in a smug tone says, "No mystery, I used the tracking chip from earlier and place it on Dr. Williams." Suddenly, La Mujer Murcielago screams. It was a rat. She fought fishmen, a gang, a mad scientist, but her being a woman means she's afraid of a rodent. Could be a good idea for a sequel.
thin. I think this film was missing campy music and a themed villain to mirror the success of the Man-Bat of DC fame. Sure, I suppose him being Two-Face is a theme, but it has no impact on him or his story, or personality, or motivation, or his monster, or his boat. Dr. Williams, like most villains of this era, want to rule the world for money and power, which of course is motivation enough for anyone, sure, but Williams' motivations seem hollow in a retrospective lens. This film is fine, not terrible, not great, but I don't know if I would recommend this film. I understand that the scream in the end is meant to humble our hero, like those one-liners from Alfred in B-Taz, but it reduces La Mujer Murcielago to a damsel in distress. La Mujer Murcielago may not be a cult classic like the 1960s Batman series, but I do commend this film for allowing the luchadora or protagonist to save the day. Most of the Las Luchadoras films have the luchadora as a title character, however they often play second fiddle to the male leads and even the comedy male sidekicks. Having a female hero that took on the role of the protagonist and was able to save the day was a good departure from the films that came before it. Sadly, La Mujer Murcielago also marks the end of the luchadora film era, so we never get to see a new generation of luchadoras take an active lead in film. I left the link to the film in the description below, so all you lucha fans can check it out. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Am I being too harsh on this film? And stick around, as next month we explore Neutron, el enmascarado de negro, because there are a lot more luchas de tres caída coming your way. Where did La Mujer Murcielago put Dr. Williams' thesis? She had a bikini. How was she going to take it back to the Secret Service? She snuck on by using a scuba scooter. If they had a tool to calm the creature, why didn't they use it to begin with? Was La Mujer Murcielago's hotel room 2 stories?